Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, and it is time for our Week 10 NFL preview, Sam.
Week 10 already. It is. It's time. It is time.
Oh, man, I didn't even check if Harry got his picks in, now that I'm thinking of it.
Oh, wow.
Of all the stuff that we've been doing here, I don't even know if Harry got his picks in, but we always make our picks. You'll make your picks, I'll make my picks against the spread,
Correct.
as we always do. The whole show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Of course, you guys can join us over at PrizePicks with the promo code Check the Mic, $50 when you play your first $5. You get $50 instantly. You'll reveal your lineup later today, and my lineup was unveiled yesterday on the Wednesday show. I encourage everybody, if you're not doing it already, join the Wednesday show. We see the numbers. We know more people like to listen to the reviews on Monday and watch the previews on Thursday, but Wednesday, I think it's gold, Sam. Shouty shows, all sorts of fun. So we had fun yesterday. Go check it out. My PrizePicks lineup was unveiled yesterday. We'll look at it again later today.
Yep. The other thing that I forgot to look up was an update for the people from the sleeper leagues in the Discord. We have 2 leagues going. We've got a survivor pool going, which it's funny because every time I log in to the thing and click on the pool icon, I'm the top name with a 100% record right up until I forgot to make a pick and then cease to be in the competition. But the 5 people remaining that have been in there every week and have got everything right continue to be alive. So that's been quite a while now that all 5 of those guys have survived. There's been a bunch of people that have jumped on since and haven't got a full slate's worth of picks, but 5 people have picked every single week and remain alive in the survivor pool.
Nice.
As for the Pick'em League, the guy New Sport Thought remains at the top with 83 wins. He's 2 clear of the chasing pack. There are 2 people behind him on 81. I am at 71, and now I got to find you and your son. I believe you're behind me still. So.
Yeah. Harry did make his picks. He's
there you are. You're at 69.
I'm ahead of you?
No, 2 behind me. I'm at 71.
Oh, you're total.
You're at
total
69.
Numbers. Harry ranks 121st, I believe, here.
121st. Okay, so where is he? Oh, you can tell me. Where is he? Oh,
I don't see the record. I just see his ranking.
100 and what now? 121st. There he is, 63. So 63, 69, 71.
Okay, great. We got some catching up to do here.
Right. Anyway, you can play along too if you go to the Discord. I think it's the announcements thing or the welcome thing. One of them, you'll find how to get into the Discord leagues and pick along with us.
I doubted my son, but he had his picks in real early. He's over there like Sunday afternoon. Like, let me pick next week's game.
Well, he's like the betting show, right? He understands the early line is when you get in.
Jumps in early.
Right.
Yeah. So he's already got his picks. We'll have Harry's picks as
Nice.
we go game by game. Anything else at the top of the show here?
No, I think that's all the housekeeping, right? Oh, we were talking about a charity thing, right?
Yeah.
We had a good suggestion for a sort of forfeit or a punishment, which is one of us has to execute a Shouty Show segment. We'll figure out exactly how that will work, right? Whether the other person suggests the topic or not. But anyway, one person has to go full Shouty Show for a segment. Whoever loses, but we need a charity to raise money for. So people send in suggestions. Email it, tweet us, whatever. Check the mic at the3013.com for the email.
I always have my suggestion, place that we work with down the street over here in Cincinnati, men's recovery program. Always happy to donate to them. We have other suggestions. We can do it.
I was also suggesting we're November the 7th. We should have done Movember and each grown a mustache because you grow a fine mustache.
We can. I mean, I shave once a week. I can just stop doing that.
You could.
Yeah.
You grow a good mustache. There are people out there that grow mustaches and they're not great. But yours is pretty good. I've seen the baseball cards.
Do you want to just both grow a mustache and we have what's the goal here?
Yeah, like just we can each. There are Movember specific, like charity things out there that you can spool it up. They're all for like men's health or whatever. I think the Movember, like the actual Movember thing is. We could each set up our thing. People could donate to it, and then at the end of November, you remain with your mustache, and I shave this down to some form of agreed upon mustache.
Is that how we're doing? Okay.
I think so.
Or we
right?
just grow. You just grow. You're supposed to shave now and grow it out throughout the month of November.
People. I've seen it done both ways. Generally, I think the agreed upon spirit of it is once you hit Movember, you shave and then grow a mustache, right, from scratch, but only a mustache. Whereas because we're 7 days into this and I have this, it feels easier to just shave this down to a mustache from a beard.
Yeah, I would say we could just grow the mustache throughout the month.
But I would need suggestions on what style of mustache to shave this down to. Do you go like Hulk Hogan handlebar thing? Do you go, sort of downturned? I don't know what the terms are, but like a little downturned thing at the side.
Suggest
Can't
best
just go straight across. That looks weak.
push brim.
What?
The push brim.
Push broom?
Yeah, that's the
Just
straight
a straight across.
That's straight
thing.
across. That's
Those,
usually
no, I don't like those.
that's
Those don't
usually
look
my
good.
go-to.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I
don't like those. Those don't look good.
It's not like completely straight across. It
You need the down.
hooks
You
a
need the
little.
little down bits at the side, and then obviously anything shorter than that ends
We'll
up
take
in,
suggestions for all of that, and we'll figure something out.
Yeah. Then
Sound
anything,
good?
obviously anything shorter than that, you end up in verging into Hitler territory, and that's never a good place to
We're
be.
not going to do that.
No,
Are we good here? We ready?
I believe so.
Let's talk football. Let's talk football teams here. Detroit Lions, first game of the week. We're going to go game by game. Detroit Lions at the Houston Texans. It's Sunday Night Football. The Lions are favored by 3.5. They're 7-1. Texans 6-3. Lions haven't lost since week 2. Houston coming off a disappointing loss against the Jets a week ago today, last Thursday night.
But the mini bye working in their favor.
They get the mini bye. So what are you looking for in this game?
Well, Houston's offensive line has become a massive problem for them. It's interesting. Remember, I feel like this is almost like the league is doing a giant troll job on me, where I just about decided that all the Shanahan offensive schemes were able to hide offensive lines no matter how bad on paper.
Yep.
And then this season, all of them are problems. San Francisco's to a significantly lesser degree, but Houston's offensive line has fallen apart, and Miami's offensive line has been problematic as well, albeit without Tua for a large part of the season. I mean, the Texans couldn't function against the Jets in large part because of the left guard. One spot, really. And, okay, they were going up against Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams on his day is one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL. His day hasn't been that frequent this year, though. Like, this is not the Quinnen Williams of a year or two ago where he was as good as, Chris Jones and an absolutely dominant force by himself. He's not been playing at that level, but the Texans made him look like that level because he was going up against Kendrick and then Kenyon Green, or whichever order they were in, and he just wrecked shop. And like C.J. Stroud was running for his life every single play. If that's the level this offensive line is at, I mean, Alim McNeil is well capable of replicating that kind of destructive performance. They just added Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith against guards is a nightmare matchup as well. So I think the big question is, how does Houston hide that?
Yeah, for some perspective here, PFF pass blocking grades for the interior of the Texans offensive line. Shaq Mason, the starting right guard, is at 63.9. Juice Scruggs, the center, is at 67. And then the left guard spot that you mentioned, Kenyon Green, in 9 games, a 40.9. And Kendrick Green, who was never really a great pass protector as a center with the Steelers or as a guard, likely the guy filling in here. And it is funny, right? Is this one position. Now, the other offensive line issues, like Laramie Tunsil has 14 penalties. It's not just like a pure can you block people issue. There's just a lack of rhythm. There's a lack of, there's a lack of, I don't know, just continuity on the offensive line. And so I really thought that the Texans might try to trade. You don't get a lot of, I didn't realize the stat somebody pulled out the other day. Cam Robinson, when he got traded, was it Chris on the Sunday night broadcast? Like, there's only been 3, or it might have been Tirico, 3 starting offensive linemen traded midseason, or just the guys who started the next week, who just like, hey, we got to plug them in and start. It's not a very common position to trade and plug and play.
I think a huge part of that is teams don't want to give up starting offensive line.
You don't get many. Yeah, you don't have many of those guys available.
It's very different from D-line rotation, right, where there's depth, where you can just plug in the next guy and it's not a big drop-off. Like, if you have a starting caliber lineman and you trade that guy away, you are probably getting significantly worse on a unit that determines the health of your quarterback. So I think teams are very reluctant to do that. Even Jacksonville, they got rid of Cam Robinson. They have faith that they can plug in Walker Little based off previous evidence of him starting, and they're okay. It's a very, I think, unusual situation where you can afford to do that. So Houston may well have been shopping, right? Picking up the phone, asking everybody, but I don't know how many people you're going to find willing to trade away a starting caliber guard.
Yes. Sorry, I was just tweeting this out, and I texted Eric Eager because Panthers signed Chuba Hubbard to a big contract. And Mike Redder already jumped to the joke. He said, I'll assume Eric Eager was out sick today. So that joke's already been made. So I'm sorry, I had to chuckle at it. I think there's a lot of fun matchups in this Lions-Texans game, though. I mean, in my head, the Texans defense, doing this every single week here, off the top of my head, there's a lot of plays where the Texans defense has kind of gotten lucky. Anthony Richardson has had some open throws that he's missed. Trevor Lawrence had some open throws that he's missed down the field against the Texans. So I had to look it up, and in my head, I was like, man, they must be giving up a lot of 10-plus yard throws, and they're not really. They're actually one of the best in the league, but they have given up a high percentage of the 20-plus, 7 touchdowns on 20-plus yard throws in Houston. So they're actually the best Texans defense. They've allowed the lowest completion percentage on 10-plus yard throws, which is great, but they're also tied for the league lead with 7 touchdowns on 20-plus yard plays. And when I think of this Lions offense, I think of them manufacturing those plays. Jameson Williams likely back here, right? They create those plays. I think about my PrizePicks lineup that has Sam Laporta and his receiving projection and how they get him in space. It's this line. I like the Texans defense. I think they've gotten away with some stuff this year. They have given up some big plays. Jalen Petrie beaten for big touchdown the other day against Devontae Adams. Can the Lions manufacture some of those big plays against the Texans here?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I also wonder, Detroit have been amazing. They have also benefited a lot from teams setting them up in incredibly, favorable field position situations in the last few weeks. I wonder if Houston can simply avoid doing that, they take a big step in the right direction to hanging with the Lions. Some other teams have not even come close because they've just turned the ball over in their own territory, and suddenly Detroit's facing instant red zone, right, and racking up points, and now that they just dig themselves even deeper.
I know Will Anderson was banged up a little bit last week, did not participate in practice. If he does go, his matchup against Penei Sewell, one of the best that we could see. Love that matchup one-on-one. And then just going back to the Texans O-line situation, I'm going to keep a close eye on how that's affected C.J. Stroud, right? I mean, if coming out of that Jets game last week, if you told me, hey, Mixon's going to get his 100-plus yards, they're going to run the ball effectively, how will the Houston do? Usually when Mixon's run well, they've played well, right? And we don't say that a lot on the show. Hey, when the running back's going, the team's playing well. But Mixon added a different dimension, especially when you have all that the injury issues at receiver. Now, Nico Collins should be back, might be back this week. Is that right? If he is, he has been an absolute game changer for this offense. You don't have all the pressure on Tank Dell.
He was like Offensive Player of the Year through the hamstring injury.
So I'm keeping an eye on C.J. Stroud. Again, my analysis on Stroud is pocket first quarterback, unbelievable going through reads, unbelievable with his accuracy in decision making, and then complements that with outside of structure plays. When he gets into the habit of doing that too often, it's trouble. So what are you guys laughing at? Stop laughing. What? Everybody stop laughing. All right. Anyway, so does Stroud change the way he plays? He hit those stretches last year where I think he was. We've seen that with a lot of the greatest quarterbacks. Mahomes has done this before. Rodgers, where they're actually like more comfortable playing outside versus inside of structure, and they can get away. They're good at those things, but everyone's better within the pocket. Everybody's better hitting open throws within the pocket. So will Stroud continue that?
Yeah, and but how much of that is being forced by, the guard situation?
No, I know.
Like
it's true.
He had to bail from basically every pocket against the Jets because immediately Quinnen Williams is steaming up the inside of the pocket, and he's got nowhere to go. He's going to get out of there.
I'm also seeing defenses, by the way, because how do you handle pressure right in your face within a second?
Right.
Sometimes you get a spin out, and then the edge rushers know this too, right? So then they take a deeper, they rush deeper and they get ready for your escape route. That's good team pass rushing.
It is. And the Jets have been particularly bad at actually maintaining that discipline and capitalizing on that interior pressure. I feel like the Lions would be better at that, even if they're potentially worse overall as a pass rushing team. If Alim McNeil has the same kind of impact or even a vaguely similar impact that Quinnen Williams has, I think the Lions will be much better at capitalizing on that and bottling up C.J. Stroud, not letting him get anywhere. And that could be a real problem for the Texans. The question is, can they offset that with Nico Collins, right? Does Nico Collins being there give him just effort, Nico's down there somewhere, opportunity to, instead of running, just heave it.
We need to do with without analysis here. I don't know if Nico's playing. He didn't practice yesterday. Don't believe he's still on IR technically with the hamstring. So we'll see what happens there. All I know is if he's not there, Tank Dell had the 6 catches for over 120 yards, and he was...
But not the touchdown.
Did not get the touchdown for you for PrizePicks. He was featured heavily, but it's a little one-dimensional. Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie and the tight ends, it's not great as far as the playmakers go. So they are potentially leaning on the run game, and I do wonder how much that ends up being the play here, where Houston has to try to run it and keep the ball away from this dangerous Lions offense. But I think it's a really good game. I like the Texans defense. They do overall make it tough on opposing QBs, but they'll have some lapses, a little bit like the Browns. Have some lapses where big plays are available. It's Sunday Night Football, man. This should be a good one. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with Detroit. I feel like that offensive line for Houston is too problematic for them to cover that line. Even with Nico Collins back, I think that will make a difference. I don't know that it hides their problem.
Yeah, I will also take the Lions. You mentioned Alim McNeil's abilities, Zadarius Smith being added to the mix, the ability to move him up and down the line of scrimmage. Harry will also take the Lions to cover the 3.5 on the road against Houston. Last week, it was the fool's bet. Remember, Houston was an underdog against the Jets, and I said, this is crazy. It seems crazy, right? 6-2 Texans versus the 2-6 Jets. Well, it was right. This one feels like a lot of people are going to pick Detroit because recency bias of Houston. So I think it'll be a good game. I'll still take the Lions, though, to cover the 3.5 here on the road.
Yep.
All right, let's go Pittsburgh Steelers at the Washington Commanders. This ends up being one of the games of the week here. Steelers 6-2, Commanders 7-2. Washington's favored by 2.5. Over under 45.5 per our friends over at FanDuel. Pretty good game here, man. And I just want to set this up. This is a 4-day stretch, I should say. We're going to learn a lot about Washington. They have the Steelers. They're playing Pennsylvania right here, right? Pennsylvania teams. Pittsburgh on Sunday, Philadelphia on Thursday. We might have something special after that game. But that 4-day stretch here with a 7-2 Commanders, I think we're going to learn a lot about where they stand in the league right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's another interesting challenge, right, for Jaden Daniels and this Washington offense. Pittsburgh's defense is really good. Pittsburgh may have the best pass rush in the NFL, top to bottom. Washington's offensive line has been really good relative to expectations. They were another team where, on paper, it's not a great-looking group. And you're like, that if there's an area where, they could be undermined this season, it's the offensive line. But basically all of them are grading well at PFF, particularly in terms of pass protection. So, and that's in general terms. Now, does that hold when you go up against TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cameron Hayward and everybody they can bring to the table? So that's going to be interesting. How does Jaden Daniels do against this incredibly good defensive front, particularly if they start winning against that offensive line?
Yeah, so Brandon Coleman, 3rd-round rookie, got the start and played the entire game for Washington last week because Cornelius Lucas, who he'd been rotating with, was hurt, and Lucas still, see what happens if he ends up playing. But yeah, the line has been impressive for Washington. How much of that is just the new system? I thought Cliff Kingsbury's always had a sneaky good run game through the years. But yeah, they're going up against the top pass rushing grade per PFF, team pass rushing grade in the NFL with the Steelers, with TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward, Keanu Benton. Love that group rushing the passer. So I think they have a chance to create pressure. The difference, though, is, I keep calling Jaden Daniels the best scrambling quarterback, maybe the best scrambling quarterback in the NFL, because of feel, because of pocket acceleration, because he just breaks angles, right? And so it is a difficult balance, because I know that when we talk about pressure, we're usually doing it through the lens of how PFF does it, which is like, are you defeating blocks? Are you creating havoc on the quarterback? A lot of NFL coaches look at that, emphasize that a little less, and they talk about gap discipline a little bit more, and you have to have that. So if they win up front, the Steelers, can Jaden Daniels offset that with his ability to scramble and turn a sack into 7 yards? That's something I'll be keeping an eye on, because if he gets sacked 5 or 6 times, I think they're in trouble.
Yeah, or even beyond that, does his scrambling threat change the dynamic? Like, does that actually slow down the pass rush without having to be better blockers, right? If, if you take Jaden Daniels out of there and throw any random, less mobile quarterback into the pocket, I would assume Pittsburgh's defensive front really does a number on this Washington offensive line, as good as it has been. But when you put Jaden Daniels back there, does that slow them up? Does that make them change different angles? Like, can TJ Watt do what he normally does, which is decide, all right, I'm gonna have one of those plays now where I'm just gonna go nuts, beat the offensive tackle around the corner, get my strip sack, fumble, recovery, etc., end the game. Can he do that if Jaden Daniels is the quarterback? Because if he's a half step too deep, that's a gap. Daniels is off. That's a 20-yard scramble. Big first down. That's going to be interesting. Like, does Daniels have that much of an impact on how the pass rush actually sets about their job that the offensive line is able to hold its own?
On the other side, so both teams have added players here. Now, Marshawn Lattimore has been dealing with a groin injury.
Right.
Not sure if he's going to end up playing.
Well, the question is, was that a Devontae Adams type of groin injury, or is that actually a thing that's going to keep him off the field for a while?
Insert the Kevin Nash getting out of the wheelchair meme here. Like, oh, new team, I'm healthy, here we go.
Right.
So we'll see. Both teams traded for players, right? We talked about this yesterday. Listen to yesterday's show. We had our trade analysis on Mike Williams coming to the Steelers, Preston Smith coming to the Steelers, Marshawn Lattimore going to the Commanders. But both teams made moves at the deadline. And one of the biggest stories you and I have been keeping an eye on is this Washington defense, right? As the offense has been carrying that team early in the season, all of a sudden they're playing better in recent weeks, creating a little bit more havoc. Dan Quinn maybe finding his groove. He's, the head coach. He's a defensive guy. They add Lattimore to the mix whenever he gets, into the mix here. If Washington's defense steps up, because I think their offense has to regress a little bit. I mean, they're still at this historical rate of putting points on the board, moving the ball. Probably has to regress a little bit. So the defense has to step up. So that's going to be maybe the matchup for me. We've got week 3 of Russell Wilson, third game of Russ, where we've said the ceiling of this offense has been raised. He's going to get the ball down the field. Now you give him a big-bodied target in Mike Williams to take some more of those shots, take a little pressure off George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth in the middle of the field against this Washington defense. So that matchup might end up be the one that determines the game here.
Yeah, whether or not they have Marshawn Lattimore, I feel like Pittsburgh's wide receivers are actually a solid matchup for Washington's corners in a way. Like, remember a few weeks ago, Washington played Baltimore. You're like, I don't know how Benjamin St-Juste covers Zay Flowers. Right? It's just a horrible stylistic matchup. Pittsburgh's receivers, though, it's more big, lack of separation, contested catch people. That, I think, like George Pickens versus St-Juste, I think is actually a solid matchup for St-Juste. Doesn't mean he won't still lose. Doesn't mean Pickens won't make the contested catch. But I feel like St-Juste has a much better chance of actually executing that assignment than he does against a small, shifty wide receiver. And generally, Pittsburgh's receivers skew towards that style of player. The only guy that isn't is Calvin Austin. Like, does he actually have a weird role because the Washington doesn't have anybody necessarily that can do that? But I do feel like actually this is one where whether or not they have Lattimore, they actually match up okay.
The other thing, forgive me if I mention it on every show here.
Okay.
The Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Yes.
About the second half, right? In 2021, Arizona was the last remaining undefeated team. And it was Kyler Murray's, third year in the NFL in this perfect upward trajectory, right? Kyler Murray took a big step in year 2, an even bigger step in this year 3, which was 2021. They still made the playoffs. But there's been a trend of Cliff Kingsbury's offenses kind of doing really well in the first half and falling off in the second half. Is that going to continue? This used to happen with Sean McVay. We used to talk about this a lot on the show, where Sean McVay's offense would kind of just like hit a wall, or defenses would throw a different wrinkle at him. See, 2018, they started playing quarters. They throw a different wrinkle at him, and it took a little time to adjust. Is that a storyline that we need to hit on almost every week here, watching Cliff's awesome offense so far this year? And if the league catches up to them, 9 games into the season here.
Yeah, it's definitely something to just keep an eye on. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury generally, whether it's inside a season or whether it's year to year throughout his career, the overarching narrative has been lack of adjustments, right? Like, team, eventually the league figures up to what he's doing, or catches up rather to what he's doing, and he doesn't come up with a counter, and it just runs out of steam. So it's always something to watch, I think. The other thing from this game, this features two, I think, of the most underrated running backs in the NFL. James Conner is just an absolute, sorry, where am I going with this?
Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson on Washington's side, and then
Jalen Warren.
there you go.
There you go.
My brain's malfunctioning.
Yeah, listen,
Robinson in particular, like he's missed some time, so his numbers aren't great.
Your brain just went back to like James Conner when he was with the Steelers.
I know, yeah.
There was a little malfunction in pulling files there. It's okay.
Yeah, it's a recovery problem with the memory. But Brian Robinson in particular, like he's missed some time, so his overall numbers aren't amazing. He's been running so well this year. He makes a difference to that offense when he's on the field.
There was a point last year, and the splits and everything can throw things off, but there was like an 8-week stretch last year where it was Jalen Warren and Jahmyr Gibbs, who were the two guys who were the best at yards after contact, missed tackles forced, yards per attempt. I mean, Warren is dynamic, and him with Najee Harris playing probably the best football of his career. The Steelers, it's the most well-rounded offense they've had in a while. And if Mike Williams does add another, intermediate downfield threat, they can be dangerous. So it's a fun game, man. It's a really fun game. 6-2 Steelers, 7-2 Commanders. Commanders favored by 2.5 here at home. So where are you going with this one?
I am going to go with Washington. I'm believing this Jaden Daniels thing until proven otherwise, really.
Do you want to type it in? I got it. All right, you're taking Washington. We're going to all agree here. I'm taking Washington as well to cover the 2.5. As will Harry. Sunday 1:00 game should be a good one.
By the way, that's all hoping that Brian Robinson actually comes back. Like didn't play last week. They sort of shut him down, I think, for his own sake. I think he makes a big difference to this offense when he is in there.
I mentioned Chris Rodriguez was the closer, former Kentucky running back on Sunday. Did a really nice job for Washington. I just wanted to reiterate that really quick. Kingsbury's offense always had, they had wider splits. They just always had a really effective run game. It's been a good complement to what Daniels has done in the past game this year. Mm-hmm. San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Bucks. It's Sunday at 1:00. Niners coming off a bye, favored by 5.5 here against the Bucks. Niners are 4-4. Bucks are 4-5. I will continue to iterate. I think the Niners are better than their 4-4 record.
Right.
They are. I think
they are, but I mean, the longer this goes, the finer the margins are for eventually proving that.
I'll be here in week 18. You're like, the 9-8 Niners are way better than this record will show.
Right.
They're the top contender though for me to be the team that just wins 4 straight because they're the Niners.
Yeah.
And who's December Thanksgiving time? I don't want to play this team in the playoffs. The Niners have the chance to be the team that heats up, and you say, okay, they're finding their stride.
Well, not just that. Like they're not just. There's a bunch of teams. The Bengals, the Jets, maybe. There's a bunch of these teams that don't have good records. We're like, oh, they could be good. They could win a bunch of games, go on a run. The Niners are the one team without a good record where you look at them and say they still have the potential to be as good as anybody, right? Not just go on a run, win 4 games straight, make the playoffs. You can still picture the Niners being the best team in the NFL when all is said and done, like making and winning a Super Bowl. And a big part of that is getting some of these players back that they've been without for a lot of it. Now, this theoretically looks like we're getting Christian McCaffrey back for the first time. He's been practicing. All indications are he's going to play. Now we're going to get a reasonable A/B test, right? Jordan Mason's run the ball well, but what impact does Christian McCaffrey have on this offense? Been talked about before, right? But there's always a confounding factor. There's always a thing muddying the water. Now we get to see a really good indication. You put McCaffrey back in the lineup, does that immediately flip a switch and this offense looks different?
Yeah, and McCaffrey's always been a big workload guy. He's been the workhorse. He's been a guy that takes 90% of the snaps and runs the ball, obviously stays out there in passing situations. And he does add, even if Mason has run the ball well, they've run the ball well overall, the Niners. But McCaffrey adds that pass game dynamic. And when they first signed him back in 22 or traded for him, I said, look, he's not going to catch 10 passes every week, certainly not in this offense. But there's going to be games where you get him matched up on the linebacker in the red zone, and that creates a touchdown. You line him up out wide as a receiver and creates a mismatch for a touchdown. Those things show up. And it's a week-to-week, it's a matchup type of thing. And for the Niners who have had all these injuries, and Brandon Ayuk's out for the season, and Debo's been I mean, he was sick for a couple weeks, but he's been on the injury report pretty much every week this year. Jawan Jennings has been banged up. It just gives, hey, it's another weapon back for the Niners here. Brock Purdy, again, overall, I think we've touted his play this year. Had a rough game against Kansas City a couple weeks back. But, again, I think all the Niners have great potential. My biggest question with them is the inconsistency and depth on the defensive side of the ball. And then Tampa Bay, I don't know how much hangover from Monday night, like overtime game against the Chiefs,
right.
Disappointing loss. You're sitting here at 4-5, and if they fall to 4-6, keep bringing this up every week. Like, you are really falling out of this NFC South race with the Falcons beating the Bucs twice already.
Yeah, they put themselves in a hole. I mean, this is a rough stretch for them where they go Baltimore, Atlanta, Kansas City, San Francisco. This is the last one before they get a couple of easy games, but even the easy games are on the road. Like, they got to go on the road to the Giants, the Panthers. Then they get a home game against the Raiders. Like, they have to weather this, but if they could sneak a win against one of these teams, that would be good. Not getting a win against any of them is putting themselves in a pretty deep hole to climb out of.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that was Tampa's schedule. Yeah, so they get into if they fall to 4-6, it's not over. Giants, Panthers, Raiders, as you mentioned, coming out of the bye.
Yeah.
You could easily get back.
Yeah, I mean, you get it back, but then you got to go on the road to the Chargers, on the road against Dallas. It's an interesting schedule. They're not dead and buried, but losing these 4 straight games against good teams would be tough for them.
It would be. And look, I was impressed by the Bucs the other night, hanging tough with the Chiefs and Baker Mayfield. I mean, to me, he's just got to play. Can he play clean football?
It's just so hard without any receivers. Like, that's a real big problem for them.
No, it is. It is. I think Baker only had the one turnover-worthy play, kind of misread coverage on Monday night, and he's just had a few too many of those this year. This is one of those separators, though. If you're going to be, I forget what his contract is, 30, 35. If you're going to be the $30+ million quarterback, you carry the team now, right? Go out there, and when you don't have the receivers, and you have to do a little bit more. You got to play cleaner. So I think that's the consistency for Mayfield, right? A couple weeks ago with the Ravens, they come out smoking, they're doing great, and then he's putting the ball, throwing the ball to the Ravens in the end zone. Similar with the Chiefs. He settled down after that one turnover-worthy play and just kept them in it. I thought Liam Cohen's done a really good job. When you have a backup QB or you have backups at pass catcher, how do you handle that? And I thought they did a really good job scheming Cade Otton open at tight end the other night. Trying to get the run game going, Bucky Irving and Rashad White and Sean Tucker. Like, they have some options here. They just have to play really clean football. And then the defense has not been great. Like, they played one of their better games the other night against the Chiefs and still ended up giving up 24 in regulation, 30 in overtime. So Bucks have to play it like they're an underdog, I think, Sam.
Yeah.
Even at home.
Which they didn't last time.
They didn't. They got to play like they're an underdog. And I think if you add that all up, they got a chance here against the Niners.
No, I agree. I think Baker played very well given that he basically didn't have any receivers. Like, his number one wide receiver in that game has essentially become Sterling Shepard, his college teammate, right? And this was a guy that was effectively out of the league at this point. Like, they've rescued him from being on the scrap heap, and now he's their number one receiver because Mike Evans is down, Chris Godwin is down, rookie Jalen McMillan is down. They're down to the bare bones. When you consider that, I think he actually did really well against the Chiefs. So, but that's really hard to maintain on a weekly basis. And again, you're going up against a tough team. I also feel like this is the type of game where Fred Warner gets a turnover by being a freak show and in the place that most linebackers are not able to be. Fred Warner is the type of linebacker that can show up. Like, he's the type of linebacker that will surprise a quarterback, right? Where Baker takes a shot thinking this is open, and against most linebackers it is, but Fred Warner is the kind of guy that can close that window and pick a ball off over the middle. So I could see Fred Warner ending up with a turnover here. I just think that as well as Baker played, it's going to be tough to maintain that with a lack of receiver help.
Last thing to just keep an eye on, Bucs running game. I think they have a chance to run the ball against this Niners defense. They're bottom 10 in PFF grade just against the run. I think the Bucs might want to get to that, slow the game down, three-headed monster at running back. Bucky Irving's on the injury report, but I think he'll be okay. Bucky Sanders, as I call him, like Barry.
Ah, I see.
Bucky Sanders.
Gotcha.
Keep an eye on that. It is 5.5 where the Niners are favored on the road, and then you have the real in-depth analysis here. The West Coast team.
A long way to go.
Flying all the way to the southeast.
San Francisco to Tampa. It's a big journey.
10 a.m. local start.
10 a.m. local.
For the Niners, you know?
A lot of miles.
So 1 p.m. Sunday start for the West Coast team. So don't forget about that in your analysis here.
I'm still going to go with the 49ers.
Oh, that's not swaying you?
No.
Okay.
I feel like McCaffrey back is big. I think that Tampa Bay without those receivers I just think they're going to struggle to maintain a decent output.
Yeah, I'll take the Niners as well, despite the travel. I will take them to win and cover. The 5.5, Harry's going to go with the Bucks in this one. All right, this show's brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Don't forget, BetterHelp is a great way to get therapy, and you do it all online. So, you know, whether or not you've ever tried this before, this is a great way to do things on your own and do it on your own schedule. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you can give BetterHelp a try. I mean, I want to be thankful this month here in November. We're going to start with that.
Tis the season.
Tis the season to be thankful. I'm thankful for my family at this time, my kids and my wife. And even when things get crazy, it's good to look at them and be thankful. And that's what I'm thinking this month here in November. And so BetterHelp is a great way to just kind of get into that mindset. It's all online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. The convenience of BetterHelp for you to get BetterHelp is outstanding. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. You visit BetterHelp.com/checkthemic today. You get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/checkthemic. 10% off your first month.
Yeah, it's a great thing to try, even if you're not in a terrible space, just for maintenance, you know, just to keep yourself in a good place mentally. And the fact that you can do it all online without having to go anywhere, go to an office somewhere, drive, you can do the whole thing on your phone or on a laptop is incredible convenience and a good way to get started.
So if you're interested, you check that out right now. BetterHelp.com/checkthemic, 10% off your first month. All right, man, let's go old school AFC East matchup here. Buffalo Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are favored by 3.5 here in Indy. Do the kids remember the AFC East Bills and Colts matchups?
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
No.
Buffalo's sitting here at 7-2. Colts are 4-5. Another week of Joe Flacco with Indianapolis, coming off of a Sunday night football game in which they scored 6 points offensively, 7 defensively. Did not find the end zone. Can they bounce back, Indy, their offense against Buffalo this week?
Yeah, obviously not going up against Flores this week, which should help. Yeah, I mean, I do think that they are – I don't think last week was necessarily a reflection that Joe Flacco stinks and that this was a bad decision to go to him versus Anthony Richardson. I think that was just Brian Flores and that Vikings defense got back on its horse, and the Colts couldn't get much done because of that. Buffalo's got a good defense. It's not like this is a complete other end of the spectrum where you're going up against a complete no-hoping unit, but I think they will be able to move the ball better. You know, they will have some offensive success, some output, and it will be a closer game in terms of the Colts having an offense.
I'm just seeing news coming through that Trevor Lawrence, it's not this game, but Trevor Lawrence might not play on Sunday.
Yeah.
Left shoulder. Is that new?
I mean, it's...
I knew he had a left shoulder, but...
Right.
Wow. All right. What game are we talking about here?
The Bills and the Colts.
Man, Bills... I've been getting a lot of questions about the Bills and just like the totality of how you feel about their season. They're at this point where you're trying to say, is this the year? Last few years, right? Are they capable of making the Super Bowl run? And they did a little reset on the roster and took some, moved on from some veterans, put some younger players in there. They reset the offense. Josh Allen, higher percentage of yards after the catch by far this year versus every other year. They've put the ball into the hands of the Dalton Kincaids, Khalil Shakirs of the world, Keon Coleman. They've added Amari Cooper. Is this enough? And what do you want to see from Buffalo to be, they're going to play Kansas City later in the year. What do you want to see for Buffalo in December heading into January to say, yeah, they can go compete with the Ravens, they can go compete with the Chiefs? I think they're in I think they're in a good spot. I don't know if they're in a better spot than they've been previously.
Right.
But I think they're in a good spot. And I also think it's interesting that Josh Allen has the great stats. We've talked a lot about his turnover-worthy plays and interceptions, what have you. They've been winning overall without having to tap into Superman, Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I think that bodes well.
It does. I guess at the moment, you could kind of fit them into the category of Miami or Dallas last year, where their wins have been generally against not great teams. Their losses have come against probably the two best teams they've played.
Buffalo and Houston.
Baltimore and Houston.
Baltimore and Houston, sorry.
So I think we'll find out more about the Bills team down the second half of the season than we did in the first half. Like, they look good. They're definitely good. But in the second half of the season, they play Kansas City. They play San Francisco. They're on the road against the Rams. They're on the road against the Lions. So I think we'll have a much better idea of how they do against genuinely good teams. But this week, they should win because they're better than the Colts.
I agree. They should. I will be interested to see if the Colts end up, when they start rethinking the Flacco thing. You know, if they fall to 4-6.
Do you think they'll go back to Richardson within this season?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, their move to Flacco felt more definitive than, say, the Panthers going to Dalton.
Yes.
The Panthers one was like, Andy Dalton's our quarterback
right
now. But in the back of your mind, you were like, I think they want to do well by Bryce Young.
Well, they sat down Bryce Young because it was going so badly that they had no option. The Colts sat down Richardson for a very different reason. Like, they, I think, genuinely determined. I think it was sort of 50-50. 50% was you can't check yourself out of a game.
It was less than 50%, Sam. He's a 44%. It was a 44% issue.
44% was you can't check yourself out of a game. That's not that you can't do that. That doesn't fly. The other percentage was we genuinely think Flacco gives us a better shot, particularly next week against Brian Flores and the Vikings. So I don't think that was the same thing where it's like we can't throw Bryce Young back out there like this is a train wreck at the moment. They can throw Richardson back out there at any time, but I think they don't think he's the best option at the moment, which he probably isn't.
If they fall to 4-6, though, they lose this game.
Yeah. Like, at what point do you throw him back out there once the season is done and no longer?
But I think because of they have to sit there logically and say if the majority of if 56% of the reason was because he opted out of the game and 44% of the reason was because his completion percentage is 44%.
Yeah.
Then you give him a couple weeks to kind of rehab his image in the locker room and earn the trust back from the team. But at some point, you got to say, the dude's got 10 career starts after barely even starting in college. What the heck did we expect? We invested in this guy. He's our quarterback for next year, heading into year 3 of his career. Do we really want to go back, reset this thing again? Who's our quarterback next year? Joe Flacco might be retired. Who's our quarterback next year? Like, Richardson's coming back within the next couple weeks, is my prediction. He'll be back. They have to see what they have in him. They have to give him reps to get better and give him an opportunity to, finish a game without quitting.
But this is the problem with this whole approach, right? Is that once you decided, okay, we need to sit him down, this is a mess. If you genuinely, like they were sort of making the point, we still have faith in him. There's still development to be done. He can still be our guy down the line. If you think that's true, the question becomes, okay, what is the actual development plan from here, right? Because obviously the second you bench the starting quarterback, you've deviated from whatever the plan used to be, right? That's nobody's plan, is that we'll start this guy and then, 15 games into his career or whatever, we're going to bench him again because it's not working. Like, that's nobody's actual plan. So you've gone off the reservation somewhere along the lines. From this point, what is the development plan to get him to where you want or expect him to be, a franchise quarterback that we can lean on going forward? And if you were planning that out in abstract terms, that once they sat him down 2 weeks ago or whatever, now draw for me the timeline of what his development is going to look like from this point on. It's not going to be he comes back in the lineup in 2 weeks' time. Like, that's not the plan either. So I don't like this idea of like we just start lurching from one to the other on a weekly basis depending on how the last game went.
I'm lurching. I'm ready to see Richardson again.
Like, that's not a coherent strategy, right? That's just.
I'm not trying to completely change my tune either because I last week I was saying, hey, the Colts offense has looked better with Flacco.
Yeah.
They've worked Josh Downs in the slot a lot more. They've spread the ball around, gotten their playmakers involved. But at some point, like last week was the closest he looked to old man Flacco, I thought.
Yeah.
And whereas last year and earlier this year, it's like, he's playing better than he did the last time he was, an extended starter. So see how long it lasts. Sorry. 3.5 though. Bills in Indy. Where are you going with this one?
I will go with the Bills.
Yeah, we're going to agree again here. I'll take the Bills. I think you're right. They'll have some more challenging games coming up soon, but they'll take care of business against the Colts, even on the road here. We're taking a lot of home favorites here. I mean, road favorites here. That's always scary.
Yeah.
Harry's also going to take, all three of us, going to take the Bills here to cover the 3.5. Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Sunday at 1 o'clock, the very first 1 o'clock game of the year for the Chiefs here in Week 10. Favored by 8.5. They're undefeated, 8-0 Chiefs against the 5-4 Denver Broncos.
And this was one of those history games for you where the Chiefs and Mahomes have some absurd record against the Broncos. I think he's only lost once against Denver.
Is it? Because last year the Broncos won last year.
Yeah, I think that was
the
first
one. They
one.
went 1-1 last year, and the Broncos gave them some pretty good games. Remember, last year, through 5 or 6 weeks, the Broncos had one of the worst defenses in NFL history. Had given up 70 against the Dolphins. They had given up 100% completions in back-to-back first halves against Justin Fields and Tua, 32 for 32, like crazy stats. And then they shut down the Chiefs offense. So
yeah,
that was when it was like the turning point in Denver's season last year, was losing to the Chiefs in a competitive fashion. Then they beat them later. So that, 8.5, it might feel like a lot the way Denver's, I think, overachieved this year. To me, it comes down to Bo Nix against Spags. Can they get anything going on that side of the ball? Because I think Denver's defense at least has a chance to be competitive against the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, anything going, or can he make enough ad-lib plays? The sort of Justin Fields way of approaching the game. Like, can he simply break enough contain to move the ball anyway with scrambling or broken plays to get enough going? Like, can he do it within structure and can he do it without structure? Either way, can he just make enough plays? I think you're right. I think it's moved a point. The sleeper app has it as 9.5, so it's moved slightly towards Denver. But yeah, I think you're Kansas City's offense, I think, looks pretty good now with DeAndre Hopkins arriving. I think that opens up, much like Devontae Adams arriving in New York has opened things up for Garrett Wilson. I think Nuke arriving in Kansas City has opened things up a bit for Travis Kelce and for some of the other players. You still have that anytime threat of a Xavier Worthy big play out of nowhere. I feel like their offense is pretty solid. And then it really comes down to, can Denver's offense do anything? Because that's a good defense they're going up against.
Yeah, Denver's defense has been good this year. They've been very impressive. Defensive front, a deep rotation of guys that can get pressure. They're going to need all those guys in this game to slow down Mahomes and the Chiefs. Last week was not great against Baltimore. Didn't stop the run very well. Certainly gave up some big passes. So they're going to have to play their best ball. Patrick Surtain against DeAndre Hopkins should be a fun one. And if they can take Hopkins out of the game and then put a little more attention toward Kelce, maybe they've got a path to slow things down. Used to have Justin Simmons back there who would pick Mahomes off at least once a game.
Right.
He already got his pick on Mahomes back with the Falcons earlier this year, so you don't have that, instant turnover option there for Denver this year. But I really think it's the Broncos offense. I think their inability to consistently run the ball, a Chiefs defense that is outstanding against the run. And, once again, I was impressed by how well the Bucs ran the other night. And then you go back and it was Bucky Irving, 7 carries for 22 yards. I mean, they were working hard to grab 3 and 4 yards at a time, Tampa Bay, the other night. Denver has the ability to run the ball like the Raiders did a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs, where the running backs went 14 carries for 15 yards or whatever it ended up being. So if that's the case, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. There's rumblings. They're always asking Sean Payton, and it's always players that I like. All the questions like, Sean, why aren't you playing player X a little bit more? And it's all players that I like. It's always Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin, and now it's Audric Estime, model genius, because he fumbled 6 weeks ago.
Twice.
So you can't have that.
He's fumbled the first time.
He's got 2 fumbles this year.
Yeah, he fumbled immediately, got sent to the hole for a month, and then came back and immediately fumbled again, and now he's never going to play.
Because it's funny, because on paper, Denver could have a good running game. Jaleel McLaughlin's a good, jitterbug type, and Audric Estime with some size, and Javonte Williams can still break some tackles, even though he's probably underwhelmed compared to what expectations were years ago.
Yeah, well, he had that knee injury that I think
the injuries have
probably affected him significantly.
For sure. But to me, talk about the run game a little bit in this. If they just pound their head against the wall and they go 20 carries for 35 yards, and then it's like, okay, Bo, hit some 3rd and 18s, hit some 3rd and 12s, hit some 3rd and 9s, like they're in trouble. If they can run the ball effectively and slow the game down, and then give Bo Nix some 3rd and 5s where he could scramble, pick up a few first downs with his legs, then maybe Denver's got a shot here, I think.
Yeah, Bo Nix honestly is a big sort of X factor in this, because he's not Jaden Daniels, but his ability to scramble and break contain is significant. Like, that can potentially slow down the Kansas City pass rush. Can maybe make them play a little bit more contained, because really, I mean, for Kansas City and Spags, you would probably say if we just contain him in the pocket, we win the game, right? If we actually go nuts and come after him, that's more dangerous. If we let him outside of the pocket to make some plays on the ground, like, he could lead the team in rushing again. That he's way more dangerous that way than he is, let's just keep him in there and make him go through progressions and beat us with his arm. I don't think he's going to do that.
The one other place, it's all the players that I like would probably have to play well for Denver. Like Audric Estime, Troy Franklin, when he gets behind the defense, actually has to catch the ball this time. They have to connect.
That would be good.
Kansas City's cornerback 2 situation, where they're banged up. Jalen Watson's injured. Nazeed Johnson, Joshua Williams, those guys trying to fill in there. It's been a weakness for the Chiefs, who like to man up on 3rd and long and leave those corners out there.
And that's such an area, like,
they wanted Marshawn Lattimore, right? They were trying to trade potentially for Lattimore to fill that spot.
But the Broncos should be able to specifically manufacture a Troy Franklin versus substandard corner one-on-one deep shot, right? Like, if the game plan is to create that matchup, they should be able to do it pretty easily, because obviously Kansas City is going to want to cover Cortland Sutton as the primary threat. They'll leave a second corner on Troy Franklin. Okay, he hasn't caught a couple of these deep shots, but he was so good at that in college. I feel like he has to connect eventually.
I felt the same thing about their guy Marvin Mims. Like, they got to have some flip the field type of plays here.
And he was really good at that in college as well. Like, why are these guys that were amazing at this one specific trait in college, they show up in Denver and suddenly that's the one thing they can't do anymore?
It's all Sean Payton's fault.
Meanwhile, little Jordan Humphrey is taking endless targets instead.
All that said, I just want a quick reset on the Broncos. They're sitting here at 5-4. They're probably staring 5-5 in the face. But I've been impressed with how they've played this year. I think they've overachieved. Your conversation that you had about the Saints yesterday, about how they're going to have to sit there and have dead money and the same players next year. Denver's sitting here with all this dead money from Russell Wilson. They're not supposed to be competitive this year.
They're paying Russell Wilson $30-something million to play for the Steelers.
Right. So, look, overall, very impressed with Denver. Feisty defense. Bo Nix has shown enough flashes where you're like, hey, maybe there's something here. I think they'll have a tough time this week, but they played really well against Kansas City last year. We'll see if they can do it again.
By the way, there's a hilarious scenario playing out potentially where the Steelers and the Broncos meet in the postseason, and Russell Wilson is being paid $30-something million to knock the Broncos out of the playoffs.
Oh, I need this. Yeah, that would be nice. That was like the Stafford versus the Lions. Like, I was rooting hard for that matchup.
Right. At least the Lions weren't like directly paying him to beat them.
Maybe it's in the AFC Championship, Broncos and Steelers this year.
Maybe.
Doubt it. All right. Steelers by 8.5 here. Over-under is only 41.5.
Steelers by 8.5?
You see, you messed me up talking Steelers.
I know.
We'll cut that out.
Well, you've got a -1 for that. I've got a -1 for talking about James Conner, a game that he wasn't playing in.
I felt that malfunction happening in your brain, and I related to it strongly. I'm like, there's a lot of information up here. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored by 8.5 at home against the Broncos. Chiefs aren't used to playing so early. They're always at 4 in the night. Is this too early for them? It's like a morning game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Denver keeping it closer than that. I feel like Kansas City wins, and probably reasonably comfortably, but I think that they at least keep it, within 8.5.
That is the last thing I'll say. I mentioned it the other night. If you look at Kansas City's schedule and the defenses that got wrecked by others and did not get wrecked by the Chiefs, they were merely good. Like, the Chiefs were just good against the Raiders and the Bucs and the Saints.
Right.
Merely good. kind of played down to play a little, closer game.
But
I'll still take the Chiefs.
This is last week was the first time they put up 30 in a long time, and they left meat on the bone there. Like DeAndre Hopkins arriving, I think, has genuinely changed the potential for that offense.
I agree. Last thing, somebody in the chat was asking me about comparing Baker Mayfield's turnovers to Mahomes. I know the interception totals are similar. Mahomes' turnover-worthy play percentage is way lower. Baker's got the second most turnover-worthy plays. Mahomes has actually done a pretty good job of throwing underneath, taking care of the ball this year. So the interceptions were kind of fake for a while for him.
Yeah.
The 11-9 touchdown to interception ratio.
The bigger thing to focus on there is more, again, the high-end plays.
He's got an ankle injury too, by the way. He's practicing. He'll be fine. He played well on it the other night, but we should mention that too.
Which, to be fair, he had coming into that game and then re-aggravated it with that run. But the Mahomes thing to focus on, I think, is less the turnovers, which are disproportionately high relative to the amount of time he's put the ball in harm's way. It's, again, he hasn't had a lot of big plays this season. Like he's had a couple. I mean, obviously that play to Nuke Hopkins in the last game was impressive, but according to PFF, he has 7 big-time throws this season. That ranks 23rd in the NFL.
He didn't have many last year. I mean, that's just the way the offense has changed. I think Hopkins definitely creates that trust in against when Denver blitzes, creates that havoc. He has 2 guys he can trust now.
By contrast, Aaron Rodgers, who Stephen A. Smith wants to retire, he's playing so badly,
has double that. Probably.
Has 18.
Yeah,
so 7 versus 18.
Shouty shows, man. You'll take Denver. I'll take the Chiefs, and Harry's on Denver as the underdogs here. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the Jets are going to Arizona, 4:25 on Sunday.
Look at that, just seamless.
The Jets are favored by 1.5 here against the Cardinals. Second straight week, the Jets are favored against a team with a winning record. 3-6 Jets against the 5-4 Arizona Cardinals. Are the Jets back?
Are they back? Based off
every week
the win.
Is Texas back? Are the Jets back? Their entire offensive line for the Jets, literally the entire offensive line, is on the injury report.
That's not ideal.
Left tackle Tyron Smith, left guard John Simpson, I guess Jake Hansen. 4 out of 5. Elijah Vera Tucker, Morgan Moses, all did not participate on Wednesday. I think they're expecting the 2 tackles to play.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there, though.
I mean, the offensive line is a potential problem for them. Really, this game strikes me as a well-coached team against a not well-coached team. And that might be doing it too. Maybe discipline is the better way of describing it, like a disciplined team against an ill-disciplined team. I think ultimately, when you're trying to articulate why the Jets season hasn't gone the way people wanted it to or expected it to, I think it really comes down to that, like discipline. Everyone's making mistakes, and it's not at the same time necessarily, but somewhere along the line, somebody is making a mistake on any given play. And each game, you can kind of point to these little bits and pieces, and it's the details, and I think it all ends up falling into the category of just a lack of discipline across the board. Whereas Arizona, I think you can sum up a lot of why they've been a better team than they were expected to be, because they've been pretty disciplined. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They are, generally speaking, overachieving because they're simply not screwing a ton of things up. So I think that is the kind of defining characteristic of the Jets in particular. And whilst I think that they've been close to a lot of wins and are quite close to being able to go on a run and beating teams, it does rely on stopping making mistakes, which they haven't shown an ability to do, not just this season, but like for years now.
Yeah, I mean, if Rodgers didn't listen, Garrett Wilson saved their season. The Rodgers 3rd and 18, you look at it 2 ways. Rodgers makes the decision to throw a prayer, basically. Yeah. But it was a prayer, right? It was literally a jump ball, which is, we call 50-50, which is really 20-80 in reality. And Garrett Wilson turns it into a one-handed, incredible catch of the year, saving their season, essentially. 2 one-handed catches saving their season. Those things overcame roughing the punter on 4th and 21, overcame the kill the long snapper penalty that almost gave the Texans
should have put more points on the board.
And the Jets made a nice goal line stand after that. But as you're saying, there's special teams mistakes, there's just general mistakes on both sides. I mean, in all phases for the Jets, that the potential special players, the Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilsons, Devontae Adams of the world have to overcome.
Yeah.
And if they're capable of overcoming them. The other thing I'll say is historically we've seen, we just saw this recently. You get a new receiver in town. It doesn't show up in the first game necessarily. This goes back to Brady getting Antonio Brown and Stafford getting OBJ, and now Mahomes getting DeAndre Hopkins and Rodgers getting Devontae Adams. Game 2, we see DeAndre Hopkins with 2 touchdowns. We see Devontae Adams find the end zone. Like, you start to get the groove back. And if the groove is back with the Jets and Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, that's dangerous, man. Because Rodgers throwing the ball is better, right? He is better. But the thing I'll say about the Jets, and throw for throw, I think Rodgers is fine. There's still something missing about this offense. The easy button is missing from this offense. The reason why Rodgers won 2 MVPs late in his career with the Packers is I think Matt LaFleur opened up the easy button to go with what Rodgers is still capable of, is making those tight window throws and making the back shoulder and putting the ball in his guys' hands, in really tight coverage. Rodgers can still do that. But Matt LaFleur opened up the easy button, wide open touchdowns, scheme plays, more motion, just beating the defense. The Jets still don't have that. So I think we're getting into this world where the margin for error is still really thin. And if Garrett Wilson makes great one-handed catches and Rodgers puts the ball right on Devontae Adams' hands on a slot fade, they're good, they're fine, but it's just they've created this really fine margin for error where Rodgers and those playmakers, I think, have to be special, and the easy button's missing from this offense.
It is, but I do think that you're right, that the arrival of Devontae Adams makes them so much harder to defend, because now you've got one threat on either side of the line, and they're both devastating, and you can't cheat in one direction, right? If you cheat the safety, if you try and bracket Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson is one-on-one, and he can feast on that coverage, right? So it's really difficult now. Teams effectively have to make a choice. Do we specifically target one of these guys and run the risk that the other guy runs riot, or do we play it honestly down the middle and kind of cheat and back off and not really cover either of them, and now they both got space? So that arrival, and we saw that it's going to have, I think, a compounding effect and a bigger effect the longer we go. But you saw that week 1. Devontae Adams arrived. He didn't have a huge impact, but Garrett Wilson did. The second Adams arrived, Wilson sparked and looked a lot better. So that offense is a lot more difficult to cover. And, okay, the Texans game is weird because, remember, the first half, nothing happened for the Jets. They had, like, Rodgers had 30 passing yards or whatever. Yep. And they were a bunch of individual plays away from, I mean, it was an 8-point win, but it could have easily been a Texans win, right? That freakish sequence down by the field goal thing where they had 3 points, took it off the board, went for the touchdown, settled for a 27-yard field goal after the Jets held, and then missed it. They went, a whole bunch of things had to happen, and yet they end up, and it was like, oh, it's an 8-point win, comfortable. But they are, I think, a lot more difficult to stop than they were a few weeks ago on offense.
No, I agree. They have more options. Other side of the ball, I was so impressed with Arizona's run game. I thought this was the first game that
I can talk about James Conner.
Insert your James Conner take. The whole run game was outstanding by Arizona. Their offensive line was very good. I still don't trust the Jets against the run this year. And when we talk about things that have regressed for the Jets, defense generally, but run defense in particular, has not been nearly as good. Teams can run on them, and I think Arizona added that element last week between the line, James Conner, and every week I'll say if the great Kyler shows up, much like great Stafford with the Lions, great Russell Wilson with the Seahawks, it showed up 3 to 5 times a year where they looked unstoppable. If that Kyler shows up, man, Arizona's tough to beat.
Yeah. Going back to the running back thing, I mean, James Conner is fantastic. The other side, though, Breece Hall. So the Jets generally, I think, perception doesn't quite match reality in terms of how everybody's performing because it's like a sort of collection of mistakes that often show. Like, there's a lot of people who are under the impression like Tyron Smith's having a terrible season at left tackle. And really it's because he's had like 1 or 2 bad games. Yeah. Overall, Tyron Smith has actually played fine. And that's kind of the story for every segment of the Jets. Like, oh, this is playing terribly, and really none of it is. It's just that occasionally, either for a bad play at a bad time or in a bad game, but overall it's just like a slight regression across the board. The one area, though, where I think it is true, Breece Hall is not having a good season at all, individually. And the offensive line hasn't been great. Like, the run blocking has not been amazing. that hasn't mattered in the past for Breece Hall. He's been one of those guys that has been able to overcome not great blocking. Breece Hall has been not good this year. Doesn't look like the same guy at all. I was on a Jets podcast yesterday. They were bringing up all the next-gen stats, miles per hour numbers. Like Breece Hall's numbers are for speed, just explosiveness are way down across the board. Like he's visibly not the same player.
Is that because he just hasn't had the long run opportunities?
No, because he's had at least one.
He did have a couple.
Right, and that one was like a mile and a half slower than his general. Like numbers of sort of 15 mile per hour numbers are down. The top end is down. Like and that kind of matches up with the eye test where he just doesn't look as explosive as he's had in the last couple of seasons. His PFF grade is way down relative to previous seasons. Yeah, and right now he's kind of being outperformed by Braylon Allen, but he's not been the player that they need him to be.
All right, man, let's make some picks here. We talk about the Cardinals enough? I'm impressed by the Cardinals. I'm impressed by Jonathan Gannon and the job that he's done. And I want to see that consistency week to week also from Kyler, Marvin Harrison Jr. I just want to see that consistency.
I'll be interested to see if Baron Browning can make an impact for them. Remember, Browning had this like all-time month a couple of years ago where he looked like the best young pass rusher in the NFL, and then that kind of disappeared. And it almost seemed like he was being sort of asked to do different things from that point on. Like they almost transitioned him into a run defender more than a pass rusher. Certainly in the Arizona locker room when he's being interviewed, he's been talking about, I can get after the quarterback, I can create pressure.
Arizona needs a one-on-one winner.
Yeah,
for sure.
They desperately need that. So I'm curious to see what he looks like in this new environment and in a new role, presumably. I mean, they're crying out for somebody that can make an impact as a pass rusher.
All right, man, where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with Arizona. I believe that discipline thing. They are a more disciplined football team at the moment, and I think that will work.
All right, I'm also taking Arizona. Harry's taking Arizona. This might be the only time I've taken the Cardinals all season.
Well, now, yeah.
Don't let me down.
This is exactly how they get you, right?
This is how they
Last week, it's like there's no way they string together 3 consecutive good performances, and they do. Now we finally go, okay, fine. Now I believe, and they'll let you down.
As home underdogs. Last thing. I know we're over time here. The Jets. You've mentioned there's a path for them to bounce back. Quick. Cardinals, Colts, bye. Seahawks, Dolphins, Jaguars, Rams. That's their next slew of games. They're probably favored in every game, right? Against Seattle.
Rams.
If they're favored against the Cardinals, they're favored against the Texans and Cardinals back-to-back weeks. Colts, Seahawks, Dolphins, Jaguars, Rams. Then they play Buffalo and Miami. But like their next 5 or 6 games, I think they're favored.
Yeah.
They're 3-6. If they play to their expected ability, they're right back in this playoff mix. That's why it's not really over for the Jets.
And so there's a sort of tier forming, like the top 5, maybe 6 spots in the AFC are taking care of themselves, but that 7th wildcard spot is going to be winnable for a team that's not got a good record right now.
Absolutely. We'll get to the rest of the games, but first, got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. We've been raving about GameTime and the ease of use and how great it is to use GameTime to find concert tickets, comedy shows, sports games. Of course, the Bengals game that I went to a few weeks ago, I like to check out all the college football tickets that are available here over at GameTime. And it's really easy to use, and you got a promo code as well at the end. So GameTime Picks helps quite a bit. It filters out the fluff, so you get your see only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it easier to save money on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing toggle. You literally just press a button and it shows the total up front. So no surprise fees at checkout. You know exactly what you're getting. Get the panoramic view of your seat right in the app, so you can see where you're going to be sitting ahead of time, and you get the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is also covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, so you can take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic, for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. I've been telling all my friends about this.
I did confirm that Rick did not, in fact, use the GameTime app, and now he regrets it. because he could have gotten himself $20 off. He could have saved money and understood where he was sitting before he even bought the tickets.
What a jerk.
So he's now a sad individual because he did not use our...
If he hasn't used it, he can use it next time.
He can. And I'm sure he will now,
now he knows.
having failed the first time around.
Don't be like Rick.
Don't be like Rick.
Don't regret not using GameTime and understanding the $20 off with the promo code Check the Mic. Miami Dolphins at the Los Angeles Rams. It's Monday Night Football. Rams favored by 1.5 here. 2-6 Dolphins at the 4-4 Rams. Throw the records out, though. Those Dolphins looked real competitive last week against the Bills. I think this should be a good game.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Miami wins simply because they've been close a couple of times and they can't possibly surely lose 3 consecutive close games with a revitalized offense.
I hate records because 2 weeks ago they blow a 10-point lead against Arizona with just a bad snap safety is what kind of got Arizona back into it. Hate records. And then they went down the wire with the Bills.
You sound like one of those kind of newfangled kids coaching things. It's like we don't even keep score.
Don't keep score.
What's the point? We're trying to get better here. We're just trying to get better. We're just trying to improve week on week. It serves nobody to keep track of who's actually winning.
Trophies for everyone.
Yeah.
I do wonder if you never knew the team's record and you looked at the underlying metrics, maybe the adjusted scores only, adjusted records. If you just use that going in.
Yeah.
And that's what models do, essentially. That's what Vegas does. That's why you have a 2-6 Jets team favored over a 6-2 Texans team last week. Mm-hmm. If you just did that, if your analysis would be better. Anyway, discuss the game.
So it's a really interesting game from the perspective of Miami's offense against the Rams defense, I think. That Rams defensive front, with the rookies largely leading the line, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, those guys have been so good this year. They're powerful. They're able to get pressure. They're able to get pretty quick pressure. But now you're going up, and the Miami offensive line generally has been pretty ropey this season. But now you're going up against the Tua version of this offense where the ball comes out really fast.
Yeah.
And the problem area of the Rams defense is the back end. It's the guys covering. So is this actually the right offense to kind of negate the strength of that defense and zero in on the weakness and just use that anticipation of Tua and his ability to get the ball out and in the air quickly and take advantage of where the weakness is?
Yeah, I've been so impressed with Tua in his return, the quick release, getting rid of the ball, and I think the Rams defensive line was wreaking havoc against Seattle last week. Gino's kind of the opposite. He's trying to get to the top of the drop and create some plays down the field. You're not going to have those opportunities against Tua and the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins defense has just been one of the disappointments at times this year. You know, they're kind of up and down, and I think that's what's let them down a little bit against Arizona and Buffalo these last couple of weeks. And you know, that's why they're sitting there at 2-6. Rams offense, man, when they've got Puka Nacua is coming off of getting thrown out of the game on Sunday.
Throwing a punch.
Get another week of getting to see Puka Nacua, hopefully, and Cooper Kupp. They still find ways to just not be on the field at the same time. But when they're on the field, and now DeMarcus Robinson, 2 touchdowns last week, including the game winner. DeMarcus Robinson, who's just, again, remember early in his career where he would make a big play here and there, but he would just find a way to bad drop or fumble, just always had something where it was like, dude, you can't play him if you're the Chiefs. The Chiefs who just can't turn the ball over. If you just don't turn the ball over, you're the Chiefs. You're going to win. Kind of ran himself out of town there, and now he's been a huge addition to what the Rams are doing offensively. So they're dangerous now.
Oh, yeah.
It's a new Rams team than they were just 3 weeks ago, and they're dangerous, just like it's a different Dolphins team with Tua at the helm. So I think it's an awesome Monday Night Football matchup, especially compared to where they were a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and theoretically, again, the Rams are going to have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams on the field at the same time. That's the kind of trifecta that makes them so dangerous. So we are going to theoretically get to see that, assuming nobody throws a punch, gets himself tossed out of the game again. Remember, last week was wild because both quarterbacks in that Seattle Rams game were making a ton of big throws and a ton of wild turnover-worthy plays as well. Like Stafford had 4 turnover-worthy plays in that game. Only ends up with 1 interception. But the variance in that offense is insane. I mean, Stafford is just dropping back and slinging it. So this is going to be a really fun game, actually.
I'm going to keep an eye on the Dolphins' run game a little bit here too. They've been back these last few weeks. Remember, they had the worst run game. Devin Achan's been great. they were one of the worst run games. Had one of the worst run games in the NFL through 5-6 weeks. Last few weeks, it's been better. Still don't necessarily trust the Rams' inside linebacker situation. Again, Jared Verse has been outstanding, setting the edge, power player that can compress the edge and make sure that you're not getting outside. But I think the Dolphins have that trickeration. Like, they've got their groove back, I think, as far as getting the speed to the edge and keeping defenses off balance, both from a pass game and run game perspective.
And Tua being back, I think, is a big part of that. They can just do so much more with him at quarterback, and they're so much more creative. You also have to be aware that the ball is coming out quickly in the pass game. I think it affects how teams defend the run against them. So I think that it's connected, his return and that resurgent run game.
And then as far as like a quick high-level view of the Rams, who they're back at 4-4. Very much in the mix in the NFC West. It's been the kids on defense. High level narrative last year was we don't know who is going to make plays on this team, and Puka Nacua stepped up and Kyron Williams stepped up. This year, Aaron Donald retires. We don't know who's going to make plays on the defense. We've been raving about Jared Verse. Braden Fisk has been disruptive. Kobe Turner hasn't been as effective as last year. I think just more on his plate, but is still really good up front as a second-year player. Jalen McCullough has 4 interceptions in the secondary, as a no-name rookie. So the Rams have, I think, for their second straight year, just in this youth movement, have been a really competitive team in what's not necessarily a rebuild, but relying on a lot of the youth. Whereas Miami, they're starting to maybe not question, but they were going for it, right? They were going to get Jalen Ramsey. They were going to get Tyreek Hill. They made these big moves. What does their youth movement look like in the next year or two? Who's going to be part of getting them back on track? Just high level, I think there are a couple interesting teams as far as how they've been built.
Yeah.
All right, man. All that said, Rams by 1.5 here.
I'm going with Miami. I believe they are due one of these wins going their way.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'll take Miami. I wonder if they're going to travel well. Everybody seems to travel well to L.A. and to Vegas.
It's always easier going that way, time zone-wise.
It is.
Yeah, it's like when you go back across the pond. Come back. It's much easier coming this way.
Coming this way, of course. I'll also take Miami. Harry's going to take the Rams here. Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. Eagles favored by 7 against Dallas. Dak Prescott out. He's on IR. Pretty bad hamstring injury. We might not see him for the rest of the year, is what it sounds like. Not necessarily because of the injury, but because, see how the Cowboys do.
What's the point?
Cowboys could be out of contention here, but they're 3-5. Eagles 6-2. So we got Cooper Rush and Jonathan Mingo in town here for the Cowboys.
And, of course, the other reason we might not see Dak is because, as the great Skip Bayless would tell you, they're about to get better with Cooper Rush at quarterback.
I was surprised, like, when we played Skip's take yesterday, and I want to reiterate here, if you are not listening to our Shouty Show segment, like when I'm walking on the street, Sam, and people stop me, they're like, Steve, listen to Check the Mic. My favorite segment from Check the Mic, Shouty Shows on Wednesday. I get this a lot on the streets.
On the streets.
Realistically, it's like when I was doing radio the other day, the host who listens to the show, they love the Shouty Show segment.
Yeah.
So Skip's take that Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott. We also had a suggestion in the comments, because you did that. That was your laugh. That's your laugh. Your signature laugh came out as soon as he said that. I put hands in my head in my hands, and they were like, "That's the new open. It's got to be part of the new opening." Was we play Skip saying Cooper Rush is better than Dak, and then our reactions.
Yeah.
Just remember that one. Somebody put a note on that one when we
get the guys to clip it.
Yes. There were times where Cooper Rush, he's quick decision maker, gets rid of the ball, and does some good stuff. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't misremembering the Cooper Rush era here. Yeah. So in 2022, he did have to fill in a little bit. He had a good game against the Giants, played against the Commanders, the Rams, and then the Eagles. Every time he's played, whether small sample size or big, he has had a PFF grade in the 50s.
Yes, I think that's a fairly significant part here.
2017, it was 3 snaps, but
remarkably consistent.
57, 56, 54, 57. The passing grade in small and larger samples, the larger sample being 182 dropbacks in 2022, the PFF passing grade has landed at somewhere in the 50s. And in his career, Cooper Rush has 7 big-time throws and 14 turnover-worthy plays. Sorry if I'm stealing some of your
No, I'm just looking at it now. I was going to say the same things. You're right. Like, it's remarkably consistent as a grade of not good. It's terrible big-time throw to turnover-worthy play ratio. And the only reason anybody is saying anything positive about Cooper Rush is that he's won some games when Dallas as a team was very good. Dallas as a team right now is not very good, so he's probably not going to win.
Probably not.
And in fact, he's probably going to make them a lot worse because he's not as good as Dak Prescott.
Not to pick on Skip. So yeah, Dallas already has their problems, and then I'm never going to quit the Eagles.
Never going to quit them.
Yeah, I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC, and if I asked you who's the second best team in the NFC, where would you land? And I don't know where it ends up, but I think the Eagles have a chance at the end of the day to be team number 2, the biggest threat to the Lions. I think the ceiling on the Eagles is through the roof. It's going to be a matter of showing up every single week. And I'm not like a lot of Eagles fans who are very upset with Nick Sirianni last week and almost blowing the game against Jacksonville. I don't know why they collapsed last year. I don't know why they had a game like last week where they almost had a collapse within the game. As long as Nick Sirianni keeps it together, I think they have the ceiling. And again, we're going to see them come back on Thursday night and play the Commanders, who already are 7-2, and big test for the Commanders. But I just think the Eagles' ceiling, including what Saquon Barkley's added, is just outstanding. They just have to show up and do it every week.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia's young players are really performing well this season as well. Like, that's a huge part of it, particularly on defense. All the guys that have been question marks for a while are really showing up. I mean, Cooper DeJean, we need to figure out how to say that guy's name at some point.
DeJean.
I know, but there's like everyone has a different reason, including him, it seems.
Who else did you say was getting a different pronunciation recently? Someone else?
I forget.
Sorry, put you on the spot. I know there's a lot of files back there.
Yeah, but he took a while to get kind of into the lineup a bit this season, but has been really good since he's got in there. So then you've got, Jalen Carter, you've got Nakobe Dean making a game-ending play last week. Like, all their young players are a really big part of this whole thing, and that, I think, has given them a higher potential than they had earlier. Yeah,
and again, I think that's why I've always been high on the Eagles. I think they've done a good job of keeping their foundational pieces in, and then when you lose Jason Kelsey's and the Brandon Grahams of the world get older, they even though Graham's still out there playing, but as players get older and you move on, they've reloaded with young players, and to your point, I think they've started to come good, and this defense looks much better than it did certainly down the stretch last year and at points earlier this season. So I'm a believer in the Eagles. See if they go on the run that I would expect them to do. Jalen Hurts taking better care of the ball now than he did earlier in the season, playing much better. A.J. Brown injured last week. That's part of the ceiling that I'm talking about. He has to be out there for them to be at their best. I don't think they'll need him this week, though.
Right.
No matter what happens. So he was limited in practice. Devontae Smith limited in practice. But either way, I think they have enough. And then Saquon, the Dallas run defense has been better in recent weeks. I still don't see how they slow down the Eagles' run game with Barkley. I expect a couple big plays here from Saquon.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, it feels like the defense is going to have some problems.
Eagles by 7. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with the Eagles. I don't believe Skip Bayless. I don't believe that Cooper Rush gives them much of a shot.
Harry's taken Dallas, so I'm going to take Philly. Harry's taken Dallas as of right now. I don't know if Harry's been up on the injury situation. Right. I don't want to lead the witness. I will give him 2 pieces of information. The first piece of information will be that Dak Prescott, the starter's injured.
Yes.
The second piece will be playing Skip Bayless's analysis to see if he believes it, right? So, no, I won't lead him either way. So, on one hand, Dak's hurt. On the other hand, this random person that you're going to hear thinks that the replacement's better, and you can make your call from there. But as of now, he's got Dallas.
Okay.
Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints, Sunday at 1 o'clock. The Falcons favored by 3.5 at New Orleans. Dennis Allen is out. Rizzi is in. What's his name?
Is in.
Rizzi. The new Saints coach? Sorry, lost it. The new head coach bump for the Saints. Can you look that up really quick? Is it Anthony? Anthony Rizzo. Saints have Dennis Allen out, Marshawn Lattimore out. We had a little bit of a reset. If you're a Saints fan, listen to Sam's conversation with Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap. Either it was on yesterday's show from an audio standpoint. It's on our YouTube channel as well.
Darren Rizzi.
Sorry, my bad. Rizzi, the only couple things that I've heard that he's changed so far from Nick Underhill, Saints beat reporter. He's got his own site over there. They've changed the way the locker room is structured. So position groups are now lockering together next to each other. And they've changed the practice schedule. I'm always fascinated by this.
Feels like kind of a pain in the ass, right?
Who was the special teams coach who showed up, like was interim coach last year and just like fired the running backs coach and just fired people? Who was that? Was that the Panthers?
I don't know.
They just like cleaned house.
If I was a player, I would be kind of annoyed if the solution was, okay, I'm going to make you change lockers now.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm here now. Do it in the off season.
You're just in a different spot.
I don't want to go.
You're going across the locker.
Move over there, even if it's with my position group teammates.
I'm just always fascinated by that. Like somebody gets their first head coaching job. It happens in the middle of the season, and it's like, man, I've been waiting for this. I got my to-do list. I know I'm loyal to Dennis Allen and everything, but now that he's gone, I can finally reshape the locker room, change the practice schedule. I could finally do it my way. I'm just interested by that. Will there be the interim head coach bump here for the Saints as 3.5-point underdogs against the Falcons?
It is kind of funny to imagine that this guy's just been sitting there for like 8 weeks going, man, I don't know why we're doing the lockers this way.
Yeah.
If I was in charge, first thing I'd do, rearrange all these lockers.
I want the corners sitting together. Do you think a corner has anything to talk about with an offensive lineman? Why are they sitting next to each other?
Walking through the locker room every day for the last 10 weeks going, I don't know why we're doing this stupidity. It's ridiculous.
He's going to Gail Benson. Hey, Gail, if we reshape the locker room, we'll get this thing back on track. Give me a shot.
Yeah. Anyway, new head coach bump. No, I don't think so. I mean, so Mickey Loomis was sort of asked about the Dennis Allen thing and was basically, it's like, he's a great football coach. His circumstances put us in this position, right? I was left with no choice but to fire him because the circumstances had put us here. But he basically said it's not his fault. It's that everyone was injured, right? And there's a degree of truth to that. Like, they've been down a lot of players, and consequently, they've been getting beat up and getting owned by a lot of people. A lot of those circumstances are still there. Now, some players have come back, and I think a thing it really did for Dennis Allen is that they did get a lot of players back, and it still didn't improve. But they're missing still a lot of players. I mean, Rashid Shaheed is down. Chris Olave just got blasted into next week again, and now has an incredibly concerning, concussion history. They don't have the weapons that they had earlier in the season.
Yeah, I'll just say about the whole we've made some Carr family jokes this week about their losing.
It's none of this we stuff. I've done nothing other than tee you up to call them born losers.
I never said born losers.
You presented the information that as a family they are genetically predisposed to losing.
I merely presented the information. You added that caption. Do not be.
No. I asked you. Was that the conclusion? And you confirmed.
Stop it. Derek Carr is still a solid NFL quarterback, despite all the win-loss numbers that are going against him. He's still a fine NFL quarterback. So I think that's what makes Derek Carr shouldn't be the quarterback of a 2-7 team, and he's not really. They missed some time and everything, but he's a better quarterback than that. Early in the season, he looked outstanding. But yeah, you don't have the Rashid Shaheed downfield connection. You've got Chris Olave injured. I mean, you just have a lot going on there. But that's what I think makes the Saints dangerous. Once again, looking at records, you don't just say, well, they're 2-7, they're terrible. I do think they're in transition. I hate their depth. I didn't like them coming into the season because of that. Thought they were limited. Now they have all these injuries and the depth is being tested. But Carr's capable of putting together a good game any single week here. I think they're going to have a tough time stopping Atlanta's offense, though.
Yeah. They're beat up on defense as well. I just think the Saints are too banged up across the board to really hang with the Falcons, who look good. Defense
has really regressed in recent weeks, and the Falcons continue to do a nice job of using all their playmakers. Kirk Cousins playing pretty clean football right now. Zach calling some good games, but Bijan, London, who's been he's a little banged up right now, but
hip pointer.
They're getting all those guys involved. and doing a really good job. Darnell Mooney creating big plays.
Darnell Mooney's route running in the last few weeks has been insanely good. Yeah. He looks really, really impressive.
I saw people making the comparison that the Bears essentially lose Mooney and add Keenan Allen. And it's like Mooney, smooth, fast, and I'm a huge Keenan Allen fan. I love him. Just you're 12 years into his career, and he's slower, and he's just not a dynamic weapon.
I mean, remember a couple of years ago, like Bears fans were so high on Darnell Mooney as a potential, receiver going forward, and then he was sort of forced into being the number one because they just had nobody else, and he underwhelmed. He didn't look good. He was with Justin Fields. It didn't work out. But I think a lot of that optimism was well-founded. Like, he's a good player, and suddenly now he doesn't have to be the number one. He's in this offense with all these weapons, Drake London and Kyle Pitts and the running backs, and I mean, we're starting to see him again look like the player he was when everybody was so excited about him.
Yeah, I mean, he was a late riser out of Tulane in the draft and then became a weapon kind of early in his career. So Atlanta's got a lot of good weapons. They're using them well, going up against the Saints with Rizzy taking over here in Nollins. The Falcons favored by 3.5 here, Sam.
Yeah, we're going to go with the Falcons. I think they're better across the board, and they're less banged up.
I'll also take the Falcons. Did we lose exploding whale potential for Dallas with Dak's injury?
I mean, it makes it harder to explode.
Because Falcons, the original exploding whale game was Falcons-Saints.
Yeah.
Right? That was the original. Made me think it's about that time of year. Dallas could have been that team, sitting there at 3-7 in a couple weeks, and Dak just, goes off in a game. Maybe Cooper Rush is the exploding whale quarterback this year.
Maybe.
All right, let's talk prize picks. You got to do you got your lineup here?
Yes.
Your prize picks lineup. My lineup was unveiled yesterday. As always, you can download the PrizePicks app, use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5.
Where the hell is my graphic?
You're looking for your lineup. I had my lineup yesterday. We'll have my
Okay, I don't see my graphic, but I have my lineup.
Do it.
We just talked about him. Darnell Mooney. I am so impressed by his route running and his ability and his production that I believe Darnell Mooney will have more than 0.5 touchdowns. I believe the man is going to score.
Nice.
I am also sticking with the same game because I believe this Falcons offense is going to roll. I believe Tyler Algier is going to get into the end zone as well. So I believe Tyler Algier will go more than his 0.5 rushing touchdowns.
This is wild.
So we're getting a touchdown for Mooney. We're getting a touchdown for Algier at the same time in the same game.
Is there a way they can no, because you can't get like Mooney, like Algier to like throw one to Mooney or anything like that.
Right. Correct.
So it's got to be rushing and receiving.
It has to be separate touchdowns, which is why this is actually rolling forward to be quite a large multiplier, right? My final one, James Conner on the brain. James Conner is going to have more than 12.5 receiving yards. So I believe James Conner is going to catch one out of the backfield, rumble for a 15-yard gain, and boom.
That's it.
That's my game.
Maybe first play.
That three roll together because effectively in the single game I need both Darnell Mooney and Tyler Algier to score. That will roll all the way up to get you 10x.
Oh, so that's a 10x. 3 picks right there.
Yeah.
So are you in contact with Zach about this? You telling him what you need?
No, I haven't yet. Maybe I should tell him he owes me one, right? Having screwed me over with Kyle Pitts immediately torpedoing the last time I did this on a Falcons game. Maybe I need to say,
feed Algier on the goal line.
Hey, since you robbed me last time, how about throwing me a couple of bones here?
Yeah. So this is aggressive. This is good. I like it. You're going with the 10x here. You got the 2 Falcons and James Conner, the 12.5 receiving yards. I like it. Good lineup there, Sam.
Yeah.
Here's my lineup from yesterday. Drake May, who we'll talk about here in a few minutes. I got him more than a half passing touchdown. I think he's going to continue to show growth as a rookie quarterback. Lamar Jackson tonight, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns against the Bengals. The lowly Bengals defense, they're going to have a tough time stopping the Ravens. And then Sam Laporta, I think against that Texans defense with Derek Stingley on the outside, Laporta will have some opportunities in the middle of the field. Got him more than 35.5 receiving yards. As a podcast, what are we, 5 out of 7 weeks we've won here? I've won 4, you've won 1. It's been a fun year so far. You guys can join us, as I've mentioned. PrizePicks app, download it right now. Use the code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5.
Which helps us out tremendously because they are our presenting sponsor.
They are. Look at us. They're sitting there right at the top, right there.
How are you still so bad at that?
All day. Because it's still mirrored.
R is quite a difficult
Appreciate
thing
PrizePicks.
to say.
Having a lot of fun with PrizePicks this year. So thanks to everybody who's joined and had some fun with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota Vikings at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Vikings favored by 4.5. I don't know if that's going to move at all. Trevor Lawrence, the report today, he'd had a shoulder injury. The report today confirmed he's probably not playing.
Yeah.
They're talking about longer term.
Well, our friend Jay Gruden was reporting that he's going to have surgery and get shut down. And then he was
really
quote tweeted / called out by Ian Rappaport, who said, no, Jay, no surgery.
Interesting.
Sources say surgery for Trevor. Damn, get well, man. Hope sources are wrong, says Jay Gruden. And then Rap Sheet quote tweeted him and was like, yeah, no, not happening.
Jay getting attacked.
Just, fact checked live. Where is his tweet? Yeah, no surgery.
You think it's easy being a
being an insider,
yeah.
Right? You think it's easy just having sources reporting what they say. Rappaport quote tweets him, says, "No surgery scheduled, Jay. There are several options, immediate and down the road. That's one of them. He's considered day to day with a left shoulder, but as he considers these options, Trevor Lawrence will likely not play Sunday. Mac Jones is the backup."
Man, I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm rooting for surgery, but if Jay's right, and then he quote dunks back,
that'd be great
on Rap Sheet.
I told you. Boom.
So I'm merely in that respect rooting for the Twitter chaos. I would rather watch Trevor Lawrence play football though and be back soon.
Yeah.
So Mac Jones takes over for the Jags, who aren't completely depleted, but only a little depleted on offense.
Mac Jones versus Flores.
Yeah. I'm just picturing a lot of chuck and ducks here. Jones does a lot of, not duck the throw, duck like your head.
So
Jones does a lot of chuck and duck under pressure. But he's a quick release, quick decision maker.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mac Jones has become something of a sort of meme of, disappointment, failure. It was a train wreck.
He shouldn't be. He was good.
It was a train wreck by the end in New England. On the other hand, he was good right out of the gate. And his strengths were, as you say, processing, accuracy, anticipation, quick reading of everything that's going on. He is the type of quarterback that I feel could be rehabilitated on the sideline reasonably well. And actually, this will be essentially the first time we see him for an extended period of time since it was awful and he got benched and he's now, done effectively as a starter. So whilst I think that Brian Flores' defense has generally been destroying quarterbacks this season, with a couple of exceptions, it's not an uninteresting matchup, seeing how Mac Jones combats that, because the best offenses against this defense have been get the ball out quick game, short stuff, schemed up plays. I don't want to say Mac Jones is a better schematic or stylistic quarterback to execute that game plan than Trevor Lawrence, because Lawrence is better as a quarterback, but he's not a bad quarterback to run that game plan with.
Yeah, I think Mac Jones ends up having a career as a pretty good backup here. That if he has to start 5 or 6 games, he can win some games.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely fell apart in New England.
This line, by the way,
a lot of things fell apart in New England. So.
Has moved massively. It's now 7 points.
It's up to 7. Okay, so that does change things.
Now, if you get in on the sleeper app with the Discord league, you get it at the low end. But we have to pick it at 7.
Sleeper. because it locked in on Tuesday.
Yeah, it locked in at 4.5.
So I might have a different pick, but I don't think so.
At 4.5, I'm definitely going Minnesota. 7 is more of a question.
Did I not make picks here? No, I didn't make anything yet. All right. What else was I going to say about? So the decision for the Jags is such an interest. Remember in 2022, that was the year that they made the playoffs with Trevor Lawrence. They were 3-7 at one point in the year, and that's why when I mentioned the Jets have a path, and I forget who put out the stat, but in recent years, teams who were 3-6, there was like one team who made the playoffs each of the last few years. The Commanders did it in 2020, and the Jags did it in 22, and someone did it last year, and whatever. Forget who it was. That's probably the decision. Like if they lose this game, we might not see Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the year. If they're sitting here at 2-8, if they're 3-7, they're going to be like, we were 3-7 in 22 and 1 out, or only lost one more game. Maybe we could do this thing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
that's just where some of the decision making comes to.
Yeah, I mean, tis the season now for those types of decisions, right? Like teams who are just about mathematically done being like, is there a point in putting our starter back in non 100%?
So, and then on the other side, Minnesota, we mentioned, look, Darnold played a nice game the other night, had a couple bad decisions, but other than that was really good. I think Minnesota is more dangerous now. TJ Hawkinson being back.
Yep.
Just, having him another week removed from being back, lose the rust and all that stuff. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison had that incredible catch the other night. We're now at the point where if you stack up Minnesota's playmakers, are they the best in the league? Like they're top 3.
Wow.
But who's better?
I mean,
who's got a better group than Minnesota's playmakers right now? With all those guys healthy, they're up there. And I'm not putting you on the spot. You don't have to rank them. Normally you would say the Niners, but they're hurt. I mean, as far as receiver depth and Hawkinson and Josh Oliver as a 1-2 punch at tight end and Aaron Jones in the backfield, I mean, it's up there. And then you add that with Flores' defense. We'll see if they can, stay consistent in the second half and maybe not get figured out as much as they have in the past. Minnesota, I think I'm actually feeling better about them now than I did maybe even earlier in the year.
Well, I think last week sort of staved off that narrative at least for a bit, right? That the defense hasn't been figured out. It's not just collapsed. Teams haven't just got the answers to how to attack this now. They were back at their best. They really did get after Joe Flacco and the Colts. And that's significant, not just because they bounced back, but also because Flacco is an experienced quarterback that if there was a blueprint to just completely shut it down, Flacco should know what it is or should be able to follow that game plan. The fact that they were able to do that again is a good sign for them. This, of course, is also the Cam Robinson Revenge Bowl. Traded away from Jacksonville, cast aside, callously by the Jags, sent over to Minnesota. I will be kind of interested to see, Josh Hines Allen spent the last several years obviously practicing against Cam Robinson. Does he know how to just go after him? And I would say Hines Allen in abstract terms is a better player than Cam Robinson. Plus he's had the advantage of practicing against him for several years.
It's a good matchup to highlight there. Maybe they freed Cam Robinson to be on a playoff caliber team.
Yeah.
That's one way of looking at it. All right, man. Well, it's 7 now. So we'll make the pick at 7. Sleeper app will do it by whatever it locked in at.
Yeah. 4.5. 4.5. I'm definitely taking Minnesota. 7.
It's in Jacksonville.
I'm still taking the Vikings, but I hate it a lot more.
Yeah, I think I'll take Minnesota. I lost Harry's pick here. TBD on Harry. What did he have? Lost it. My guess is he took Minnesota. Yes, he did. And we'll see if he does it again. Put him down as Minnesota. New England Patriots at the Chicago Bears. Bears favored by 6.5 here. 2-7 Patriots against the 4-4 Bears. Over-under is only 38.5 per FanDuel. Last year at this time, this is the 2 quarterbacks who were projected to go 1-2 for a long time here.
Yeah.
I used to put a poll out all the time. Drake May or Caleb Williams? Who you got? Before Jaden Daniels, put together the Heisman season and really became the slam dunk number 2 overall pick. This was supposed to be 1-2, Caleb Williams versus Drake May.
It was. And, last a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was last week, there was so much excitement over Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, as the 1-2 best quarterbacks in this draft class. But as you said, for a long time it was supposed to be Caleb Williams versus Drake May. So if you take Jaden Daniels out of the equation, this guy that emerged and became the number 2 guy in the draft and became the best of the quarterbacks so far, we get to see Caleb Williams versus Drake May. That I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think that's fun, man. Again, high level, just looking at where May is. I don't know if throw for throw a grade or production numbers look great, but I think you've seen him elevate just a subpar Patriots offense. Had a bunch of turnover-worthy plays last week, including a game-ending interception.
Well, it's a really interesting because I would say right now, Drake May has probably outperformed Caleb Williams in a vastly inferior situation. Like, Caleb Williams has a much better situation, albeit not perfect, but a much better one than Drake May does. And Drake May's situation is terrible, but he's actually been performing reasonably well. I think it's definitely been the better of the two quarterbacks. So that makes it an interesting matchup as well.
May also has, in limited time here, the highest rushing grade of any quarterback.
Right.
Every time he's scrambled, it has been pretty much a first down or a high-value proposition.
I did always feel like that was an underrepresented part of his profile coming out. I think it's another one of those ones where because, like, when you're in the same draft as a guy who has like a special attached to a specific trait, if you're just good at it, it gets completely ignored, right? Like people being in the same, like when, Justin Fields was coming out, like everyone was seen as a marginal athlete at best by comparison, but a lot of them were actually pretty good athletes in their own right. You just never talked about it. Because Jaden Daniels is really good scrambling, I feel like a lot of people just sort of slept on how good of an athlete Drake May is.
Yeah, May only has, he's got way less time playing than other QBs. The leading QBs in scramble yards this year: Jaden Daniels with 343, Bo Nix 225, Kyler Murray 216, and then Drake May 209. Then Lamar Jackson 201. Again, just to reiterate the difference between a scramble and a design run. So this reminds me a little bit of like Josh Allen was good and athletic, but he didn't use that ability a ton. And it got lost on me a little bit in the transition to the NFL that he could be a great scrambler. And I think you're not building the whole plane out of QB scrambles, but what May has done has been impressive. And what that does is just picks up plays when there's nothing there, right? And puts pressure on the pass rush to stay in their pass rush lanes. And that protects the offensive line. The offensive line on paper is probably the worst in the NFL. Production-wise, it's one of the worst in the NFL. So when you're able to add that element, it slows down the pass rush just a little bit. So I think that's been impressive for May. For Caleb Williams, I think Ian Hartitz put out the chart yesterday. His whatever production metric he used, it was beautiful. It was like getting better every week for Caleb Williams. Then the bye week happened, and it tanked. In the last 2 weeks, Caleb Williams, all of his production, all of his performance has regressed. It was a nice, easy narrative. The rookie number 1 overall pick was getting better every week, Sam. And the last 2 weeks have not been great.
Yeah, that's not ideal. No, it's been a weird season for him so far. I think generally, like his supporting cast is definitely better than Drake May's, but a lot of that rests on the receivers as opposed to like the offensive line has definitely not been particularly good. I think a big part of it though is in the 3 pillars, offensive line, receivers, scheme. I think the weakest of the 3 for him has been the scheme. Like you watch a lot of tape, people are just ripping apart what this offense is trying to do, from a play design standpoint, from a route concept standpoint. And I think that's part of why
I'm one of them. I did that Monday.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why they're not able to get, there's a lot of trends in this season of his where it starts off playing nicely within rhythm and then it falls apart once we get outside the script. And the plays just aren't working deep enough into the game. And so it all has to rest on him. Now you've got, Keenan Allen hasn't really made the impact that he was expected to. DJ Moore leaves the game hobbled. You saw that play, right, where he walks off the field, and the
I thought
explanation.
It looked like he was limping.
Yeah,
anyway.
The explanation was that he did his ankle or something and hobbled to the sideline and sat down, as opposed to he just bailed on a play for his quarterback. All of a sudden, you got a banged up DJ Moore. You've got Keenan Allen who hasn't made the impact. Now it's kind of resting on Rome Odunze, who's been impressive, but you're chipping away quite quickly at that supporting cast.
There's O-line injuries as well. Darnell Wright missed a bunch of the game on Sunday. He didn't participate Wednesday, the starting right tackle. Left tackle Braxton Jones didn't play the other day, dealing with some injuries. So they had some injuries there. He didn't participate in practice. So that's just another issue. And for whatever reason, the Bears' offensive line has just felt worse than whatever their production grades look like. The other thing I wanted to highlight, mostly nose tackle, Andrew Billings out for the season for the Bears. Gervin Dexter's played pretty well this year for them, the second-round rookie from second-year player. Zach Pickens has to fill in, but they're not really hold the point type of defensive tackles. I got some issues with the Bears' run defense, I think, right now without Andrew Billings in there.
Billings has been really disruptive this year.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of plays.
So that's something to keep an eye on. If New England they might have a chance to get the run game going here.
Billings is like an all-time weightlifting like record holder. He has some absurd number. I forget what the actual thing was, but in high school he lifted when they had these weight competitions where you lift like three different lifts and you combine them all, roll them all up into a number. He lifted some absurd number when he was like 18 years old. Yeah,
I remember that. Because he was a big recruit for Baylor, played well at Baylor, ends up going in the 4th round. I thought he was going to be started kind of slow in his NFL career, but he's become a really good player these last few years. So Bears favored by 6.5 here. This is one of those big line, small over under type of games.
Yeah, I'm going to go with New England covering that.
Yeah, I think I am too, just because of that, right? The fact that it's 38.5 and 6.5.
Yeah.
Harry will also take New England. Harry's my son, for people that are asking.
Yeah.
9 years old.
Back in 2013, Andrew Billings breaks Mark Henry's state powerlifting record. Mark Henry, strongest man in the world, right?
WWE superstar.
Right. He lifted a combined 2,010 pounds in the squat, bench, and deadlift.
Wow.
That's quite a lot of weight.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That's why at one point I thought he'd be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, he's the strongest man in the world, and he's a pretty good football player at Baylor.
That was a 500-pound bench, 805-pound squat, and 705-pound deadlift.
Wow. What was the bench?
500.
In high school?
Yes.
That's crazy.
He was 18, I think, when he did this.
That's impressive. All right, we got 3 more games to discuss. Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers, 4:05 Sunday. This is a good 4:05 game. Chargers favored by 7.5 here. 5-3 Chargers against the 2-6 Tennessee Titans. They still keeping Will Levis shut down or what?
At pain of death.
Limited participant.
Will, I'm afraid you're just not ready yet to play. Your shoulders, it's too bad. I feel like I'm good to go, Coach. No. Gonna have to protect you from yourself.
Both teams pretty banged up here. Both running backs for the we didn't see Tajay Spears didn't play last week. Tony Pollard, they're both injured. We'll say they're both hurting. Limited at practice yesterday. Both edge rushers for the Chargers, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Bosa didn't play much the other day anyway. Both limited. Mack didn't participate. Chargers though, are they coming back into like sneaky good right now? Good pass defense, good defense overall.
Yeah.
And Justin Herbert playing pretty well now compared to where he was earlier in the year.
The other significant injury for Tennessee is Lloyd Cushenberry at center, went down with an Achilles injury.
He's out, yeah.
Remember, this was the worst offensive line in the NFL for 2 straight years. They made significant upgrades in various different spots this offseason. It's been better. It still had some major weaknesses on it. Now they have another one because one of the guys that came in to upgrade the center spot, he's now down, so you're back down the depth chart. So that's a potential significant blow for them. But yeah, the Chargers are looking a lot better. I mean, Justin Herbert has really been impressive the last few weeks. While he hadn't necessarily had a ton of turnovers earlier in the season, he'd had a bunch of turnover-worthy plays. He really cleaned them up in the last few weeks. Has he had any in the last 3 weeks or something? But he's playing a much cleaner brand of football.
And that's coincided with guys like Ladd McConkey showing what they're able to do. Ladd's had some big plays. My favorite part about Ladd McConkey last year as a rookie, fast and quick. One of the few guys I think that can be fast and quick, right? That a lot of guys who run. What did he run at the combine? I don't know if he ran because he plays 4.3. Plays 4.3. Like I know I've got the computer vision metrics and everything that we had him super fast. Athleticism metrics from PFF that we had, all those things were all in McConkey's favor. But a lot of times when guys are fast, they're unable to get in and out of breaks and everything. He could do both, and I think he's been a dynamic weapon for the Chargers these last few weeks.
4.39 at the combine.
It was. So he's a 4.3 guy who can get in and out of breaks smoothly. That makes him dangerous. What?
4.39 being described as a 4.3 guy.
Yeah. I mean, if he ran 4.4, he's a 4.4 guy.
Right. Now,
but anything in the 4.3s, he's a 4.3 guy. Right. He's in that
100th lower, and you're a 4.3 guy.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the Chargers, Harbaugh's put his stamp on the team. They still like to run the ball. They're playing really good defense. But now they've got Herbert playing well. And now the Chargers they're a competitor for Sam for Thanksgiving time. first week of December time. The Chargers are not the team that you're going to want to play in the playoffs. They're a competitor to be that team that Rich Eisen says you don't want to play the Chargers. It's always Rich Eisen's going to say it. You don't want to play the Chargers come January.
Yeah, I mean, they're 5-3. So, even just record-wise, they're a pretty good team. They've also faced a lot of good teams. Nobody wants to play a Jim Harbaugh team in the playoffs, just ever.
No.
It's just not a team you want to face.
He's built
for the playoffs.
January.
Built for playoff football.
Yeah.
Albeit, I mean, playoff football in January in L.A., it's not like it's,
That is kind of funny. The hard-nosed, run-first Jim Harbaugh is going to play in a dome in L.A., but that's fine.
Right.
It's fine. They're still built in his image.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, let's pick the game. Do you have anything else to add to this? We're at that point because we still have Thursday Night Football as a matchup, and we got to talk about that. So
okay, I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Yeah, I'll take the Chargers. I think, is there any Levis ability to come back? I think, Rudolph is Rudolph.
So if you're
not the reindeer.
Yeah. If you're them, because when is he good enough to go, right? For the Titans, you have to factor in not just can he throw the football, but is he good enough that he can launch himself 8 yards onto his shoulder? Because that's what we're.
He might never be.
Because he's going to do that in a game. Like the second you put him back out there, he's either going to throw that shoulder into a linebacker or launch it into the turf, trying to pick up 2 yards on 1st and 8 or 1st and 10 rather. You have to factor that in. You can't just be like, yeah, he's good enough to throw the ball.
Yeah,
that's not good enough.
Well, I think Tennessee's pass game is going to struggle either way against the Chargers. I'll take the Chargers to cover. Harry's going to take the Titans to cover the 7.5.
Okay.
Let's go to Germany.
Yeah.
New York Giants at the Carolina Panthers. We're back to the 9:30 a.m. start here. Giants at Panthers. Giants favored by 6.5 over in Germany. A couple 2-7 teams were sending over there.
Yeah. I mean, if there's going to be a game at 9:30 in the morning, it feels like a couple of 2-7 teams should take that spot. It's like it's a time spot for kind of crappy football, isn't it?
What did the NFL look? I mean, you don't always know exactly what the teams are going to be ahead of time, but
Sure.
The first Germany game, I believe, was Bucs Seahawks a couple years ago.
There was no point where this game looked good on paper.
Last year was Chiefs Dolphins.
Yeah.
So they sent Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And now we're sending Bryce Young and Daniel Jones.
Correct. But this
that's
is one
really that's good. You set the Germans' expectations really high for a couple years, and then just
dash
let
their
them,
hopes. Well, you
down.
you're like, okay, let's really excite them to get this thing going, and then you're like, let's see how really into this they are. It's easy to be a fair weather fan when you got Tom Brady and Mahomes coming to town. Like that's cool. But now let's see how much they really want it.
Yeah,
let's send them Daniel Jones.
Let's see how much you really want it.
But sometimes, in this world of flexing games into better schedules, some companies are able to get better games late in the season, even if they've chosen one that didn't look so great. Other companies are locked into whatever they chose, earlier in the year where things look good and then they've materialized in a different way. This was one, though, where at no point did it look like an enticing matchup on paper.
No, they knew what they were doing.
Right. There was no stage where this looked like a banger and then suddenly, oh, no, things have kind of gone away from us and this is kind of weak. This always looked like a bit of a stinker.
Battle of two teams with top five picks from last year.
Did you see the email where somebody sent us an Acho segment claiming that Daniel Jones was individually ruining the integrity of the game?
That is, yes, I did see that.
It was a peak shouty show segment from Acho.
Special.
Yeah. Daniel Jones is ruining the integrity of the game because by playing Daniel Jones,
the integrity of the game,
you are no longer trying to win football games. That was the argument.
I always use the phrase top 32 QB in the world.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is still top 32.
Yeah. I mean, he's also better than anybody else on the roster. That implies that not starting Daniel Jones gives you a better chance to win the subsequent game, but the alternative is Drew Lock.
Come on, Acho. That's bad even for Acho, ruining the integrity of the game.
Yeah. I mean, this is also coming off a game.
He's ruining the integrity of the game. The media game.
He's ruining the integrity of something, yeah. That's also coming off a game where Daniel Jones just trucked a guy in the end zone, then ran through another one to score a touchdown.
Yeah, it's coming off a game where he was decent.
Right.
And threw touchdowns at home for the first time in 12 years.
Yes.
Bryce Young watch, though. I mean, we spent a lot of time on him on Monday, raving about how well he played. also threw the caveat, it's against a bad Saints team.
Yeah.
But the traits that you saw, it was the first amalgamation of all the traits in one game from Bryce Young. Anticipation, accuracy, natural playmaking, and general comfort level and confidence all at the same time. And so now, can he keep that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all reasonable, right? It was a really impressive performance and probably his best of his career, maybe second best, depending on how you want to rank certain games. It was better than it was statistically because of a couple of big plays that his receiver screwed him out of. But it is a significant caveat that it came against the New Orleans Saints defense, which has been banged up and awful recently. Now we get to see, can he do it again, right? And that's ultimately the only thing the Panthers are playing for at this point in the season. Can Bryce Young show anything down the stretch so that even if it's not for our purposes, he's worth more in a trade? And that's the only thing the Panthers are looking for. And then for everybody else, it's like, do we see enough in Bryce Young that we might be interested in trading for him if you're the Rams, if you're the Dolphins, somebody not necessarily for right now, but for the future.
And then the other news that broke while we were on the show here today, the Panthers extending Chuba Hubbard, 4-year, $33.2 million contract, 8th or 9th highest paid running back in the NFL right now. In the same week that rookie second rounder or third rounder, Jonathan Brooks. Again, time we're at in my head. I thought he was going to go in the second. I can't remember where he went.
Second, right?
Was second. Jonathan Brooks activated off of IR. Remember, he was injured last year at Texas. When we ranked running backs this offseason, he was my RB1. I think he was 2 or 3 for you. So I'm a big Jonathan Brooks fan.
Yep.
So, look, generally not fans of the long-term running back contract. I think the cap is in a spot where this isn't crippling, right? I mean, it's going to be okay.
Definitely not crippling.
And I think Chuba Hubbard's a good player, man. He is and I think you get this complimentary 1-2 now with Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard. You at least have that locked up, and maybe the Panthers just don't have to think about running back for the next 3 years as far as team building goes.
Yep. This is a spot where, a lot of games are like this for the Giants, but this is a potential Dexter Lawrence wreck and shop type of game. The Panthers, that offensive line's been pretty good, very good, in fact, this season. One area where they have lost a player is at center. Now they're down to a backup there, backup going up against a true nose tackle, Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence able to individually destroy games. And, of course, the biggest Achilles heel for Bryce Young so far in his career has been wanting to get the hell out of a collapsing pocket up the middle.
Yeah.
If Dexter Lawrence shows up and is like, I am going to collapse every single pocket that you are looking at right up the middle, does Bryce Young immediately kind of turtle up, go back into non-functional? Now, to offset that, you have, again, what we talked about, an encouraging development last week where they moved a lot of those pockets. They did not just have straight drop back, stay in a static pocket. They had, motion, play action, rolling out, move the pocket left, move the pocket right. They got that on the move. So maybe that's a way of not just helping Bryce Young get out of that situation, but also involving the guards, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, to kind of double team a little bit, right? When you sort of roll the entire pocket in one direction, nobody's really blocking one-on-one. It's all a bit of it's more like it's almost like a run play, right? Where it's like a wall of offensive linemen. So that way, maybe you can insulate the backup center against the nose tackle.
Can't move the pocket every time, so
you can, but you can do it a lot.
Yeah.
You can hide, you can reduce the impact that would have, which if it was just an honest thing would be destruction, I think.
All right, man. Giants by 6.5. Big number for a team like the Giants that are 2-7. But you just talked about Dexter Lawrence ruining Bryce Young's life. I could see that happening.
I did, and I had the Panthers covering that until I brought that up, and now I'm changing.
The number of times that you gave your Dexter Lawrence analysis and then picked the Giants, I think that's at least 3 times this year.
Yeah,
that's happened. You convinced me too. I'll take the Giants.
We've seen it happen.
6.5.
We've seen it happen in playoff games where he has individually decided, nope, the game is going the other way. Now, these aren't playoff games, but when you find a favorable matchup, he's a guy that can do that to a game.
So we'll both I hate this. I think the Giants are also kind of close, played a lot of close games, been competitive most of the time. I'll take them to cover the 6.5. Harry will take the Panthers here. All we have is Thursday Night Football to discuss. It's a huge one. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at PFF. We're coming to you from PFF Studio. We both worked at PFF for over a decade, and PFF has you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from fantasy expert, our friend Nathan Yonke, and stay connected to the next generation of talent with the best NFL draft coverage on the planet. So no matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make winning decisions. Visit PFF.com, sign up today for less than $10 per month. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. All right, man, let's go Thursday Night Football. Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. It's a monster game. Ravens sitting here at 6-3. Bengals 4-5. Season's not over, but you got to find a way to beat the Ravens here, who, again, they're only 6-3, but they've been probably the most dominant team along with the Lions as far as when they're on, and they're tough to stop. So
Battle of the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, according to PFF grades. Lamar Jackson, overall 91.7, passing grade of 90.8. Joe Burrow, overall 91.1, passing grade of 90.7.
They're also 1-2 in ESPN's QBR. Lamar Jackson 77, Joe Burrow 76.3.
Yeah, and of course, very different narrative surrounding them because Lamar Jackson's teams have generally been winning games. Joe Burrow's teams have generally been losing games because the defense stinks.
As I mentioned a few weeks ago, MVP candidate Joe Burrow.
Yeah, you made that point. I saw Dano making the point this week that if his defense didn't stink, Joe Burrow would be an MVP favorite. It's legit. I mean, that's the situation. You've got probably the two best quarterbacks in the NFL this season. 3 if you want to throw in Jaden Daniels, but that's the company. Only one of them has a defense supporting him. The other one doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, the story of the Bengals season has been the defense, the disappointment of the defense. Lou Anarumo as the defensive coordinator. And they were never really like a top 3 defense or anything, but you would say when teams found weaknesses, they adjusted really well. They used to always make those second half adjustments. They did great against Mahomes relative to the rest of the league. They did a lot of good things defensively through the years. And this year they have been unable to do that. Inconsistent pass rush. And just really it's the defensive front, I think, that's been most disappointing. So for me with the Bengals every week, it's like their stars need to play as stars on both sides of the ball. It's Burrow and the pass catchers, and it's Trey Hendrickson rushing the passer. And he's been outstanding. They just haven't had enough help, but maybe Myles Murphy coming along and, Chris Jenkins, the rookie, maybe they can get some help from those guys. And if they do, Cincinnati has a chance to make the run and maybe at some point make me look good as I pick them to go.
Yeah. I just feel like I don't know how they stop the Ravens offense. Like the Ravens offense looks so good right now. It's diverse, it's versatile, it's able to kill you everywhere. It's so hard to defend for a good defense, let alone a defense that's been struggling overall this season. I could imagine Burrow and their offense doing well, putting up some points, having a good game. I just think he's so handicapped relative to what the other side of the ball is doing. I don't see how they can come out on top without a couple of freaky plays bouncing their way.
I agree, man. I think it's a shootout. Cincinnati has to play it like it's going to be a shootout. They got to make a couple stops on defense. But, I don't trust them slowing down the Ravens. I don't think they can stop the run game effectively, and I don't think they've – when you talk about pass rush, you're talking about disrupting the quarterback. And what happens is when you have one pass rusher, and Hendrickson, he kind of has that TJ Watt ability. Like when he wins, he's finishing a lot.
Yeah.
Right? He'll win and it'll become a sack. And that's great. Even if he gets 1 or 2 sacks here, the Bengals would need that. But if he has one of those 8 pressure games, and it's like some of those Hutchinson games where it's like Hutch has pressure, but you have room to avoid Hutch's pressure because no one else is compressing the pocket. That's been happening too much with Cincinnati this year, and it's Lamar Jackson. So if you only get one pressure and no one else is doing anything to compress the pocket, or Lamar's breaking free from that and making plays.
Yeah.
So that doesn't bode well for Cincinnati.
And look, I think lost in all this maybe a little bit is that Baltimore's defense has not been particularly good this year either.
Right.
I think they're ranked 22nd and 23rd in EPA per play against, according to PFF's numbers.
Pass game especially.
Yeah, and that's why they were looking for corner help. They were trying to get Marshawn Lattimore and ended up settling. But I think the real difference is, okay, the Bengals do have Trey Hendrickson. That's significant. But the Ravens, I think, just have more playmakers. They've got Kyle Hamilton. They've got Kyle Van Noy. They've got just more players, I think, that can make a play here or there, and it's just enough to keep their heads above water. And as good as Joe Burrow is, and he is playing lights out, and Jamar Chase is phenomenal, they're just less – they have fewer ways to win than Baltimore's offense. Like the Ravens, with Lamar's passing ability, with Lamar's running ability, with Derrick Henry – with the receivers that they now have, they just have so many more ways to win in that, much more hard or much more difficult to defend because of that. Whereas Cincinnati, they just don't have the variety of ways to beat you.
Huge stretch. You're absolutely right. Completely agree. Huge stretch for Cincinnati. The only thing I'll say is when the Bengals get going, they have top 3 team ability. Right, and there's a lot of the same players on this team, and I don't know if that started last week against a lowly Raiders team, if that triggered something that will get there, but Bengals are capable of looking like that. If they're going to do it, it has to happen now. They're at Baltimore this week. They're at the Chargers next week, and then they have a bye. Then they have the Steelers. A 3-week stretch against 2 division rivals. And a Chargers team, all over 500, all playoff caliber teams. If the Bengals are making a run, it's happening in these next 3 weeks here.
Has Jermaine Burton been able to keep it together for 4 days this time? Are we getting him on the field?
As of right now, he's been practicing.
Okay.
I don't know if he skipped yesterday's walkthrough or anything like that, or Tuesday's walkthrough.
Right.
But it's a short week, fewer practices
That's
to
what I mean.
potentially miss.
Several fewer days to screw up.
Any given week, you're going to get Jermaine Burton, 2 catches, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, something like that,
And the Ravens.
Or 2 catches, like 90 yards.
I mean, that pass defense can be attacked. Like this
guy's averaging 41.5 yards per catch or whatever it is in his career. Maybe. Keep throwing it.
The Ravens is the team to take a deep shot against.
Yeah. So look, I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great game. I think Cincinnati's defense has to be better. Baltimore looks like when they're at their best, they're the best team in the league.
Yeah.
With them and the Lions and the Chiefs. They look like the 3 best teams in the league. Sorry, not the best. But good Ravens looks unstoppable. Good Ravens team. And they seem to play their best against the better teams. And so they have a chance to make another statement here on Thursday Night Football. Mm-hmm. Remember last year they played at Thursday Night Football in Baltimore. Burrow got hurt. It was supposed to be a great game. I probably had the same analysis last year too. And then Burrow got hurt and ruined it all.
Yep.
5.5 for Baltimore. Where are you going?
I will go with the Bengals.
I'll take Baltimore. I think they make another statement here in primetime. Lamar makes statements in primetime, man.
He does. I do believe that the Ravens will win, but I think that the Bengals will keep it closer.
Thank you for prefacing. We're picking against the spread here. The Ravens fans are in there. Why do you pick against my Ravens every week? They get mad. Harry's going to take Cincinnati here.
I'll
take Baltimore.
Hometown.
Yeah, he always takes the home. Yeah, he's been picking against the Bengals recently, but he's taking them tonight. All right, man. That's it. Work week's done.
Yeah.
Call it a week. Now we're going to be live tonight after the game. We'll instantly react to Bengals Ravens. Next Thursday night, we're trying to get something in the works that's extra special for the post game for next Thursday night, Eagles and Commanders. So just be ready. Just keep an eye on that. If you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you do that. Subscribe, thumbs up. We just hit over 19,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We appreciate it. We've only been doing this for about 3 months here as Check the Mic. So we appreciate all the support. Not even 3 months. Appreciate everybody who's joined in on the fun here.
Yeah, and if you haven't yet, please do hit the subscribe button.
Subscribe and thumbs up.
Go
do it
from
both.
19,000 to 20,000 to 21. Let's keep going.
Just keep going. We're just trying to get to 100,000 as soon as possible. So if you guys could accelerate that, appreciate it. All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Monday with more Check the Mic.